Look at you, another coward trying to play it tough.
Don't you sore mouth me.
I didn't think I needed this, but...
All right, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another podcast with the episodic discussion. We're going to do a podcast on Red Dead Redemption, the entire series. You know, we're going to be talking about Revolver, Redemption, Red Dead 2, and everything under the sun that we think about it. So, as always, I am your host, Renegade Operative, and I'd like to introduce my panel. First, we have Mr. Cryo.
Hello, guys. I can't wait until we get a jump start with this and learn more things about Red Dead Depression, as I like to call it.
Yeah, this is a very depressing franchise, but I'm going to save my sauce for that question when we get to it. Next up is Slash.
Hello. Red Dead Redemption is one of my favorite modern day gaming franchises, and I've really been excited to talk about it. I've just been excited to talk about games since the Final Fantasy 16 podcast, in fact, so I'm really glad to be here.
Glad to have you, glad to have you. Next up, we have Shug.
Hello. Very excited to talk about this game. I really love the second game, at least. So, yeah, very excited to see everybody else's opinions about it.
Next up, we have Rex.
Yo, I haven't really played the games, but I am a huge Western nerd. So I just joined because, well, it's right up my alley. I want to learn more about it.
Hey, I mean, sometimes there's nothing wrong with having someone that's the outside looking in, so we're probably going to be contributing that way in that department. Jockey, introduce yourself, good sir.
Oh, sorry. You speaking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to call me Joey, everyone. That's usually what I go by on my other podcast and everything. I'm here because obviously I love myself a good video game here and there, and been looking to branch out. And it's been really cool to talk to everyone here, even inside this podcast panel. It'll be really fun. So, yeah, look forward to it.
And it's your first guest podcast with us, so I guess that could be an interesting dynamic. But I'm gonna get right into it with the first question, and I'm gonna go down alphabetical order with the listing and everyone. So we're gonna start with the first question. The first question is, how did you initially get into the Red Dead franchise? What compelled you to pick this one up in the first place? Jockey, we're gonna go with you first. What compelled you to pick up Red Dead?
So I have picked up Red Dead actually from my childhood. I'm not terribly too old. I mean, I'm getting close to that 30 mark. But yeah, I mean, when I first picked up Red Dead, it was interesting because when I was a kid, it was one of the first games that somebody ended up giving me a game. I mean, it was one of the first ones I had on my PlayStation, and I was really excited about it because at the time I actually played the zombie Red Dead before I played the actual base content game. So it was really interesting for me to kind of pick that up first and see everything beforehand. And of course, with it being like me being younger, I really didn't understand as much as I do now about the game, and that is kind of where I picked it up. Was just somebody handed it to me and was like, "Here, dude, happy birthday, have a good day, have a blast." So that's where my introduction came from.
Cryo, what about you? How did you get into Red Dead for the first time in history?
So back in 2010, I want to say, at this point, I was probably 13, 14 at the time. Mom worked at Walmart, and a few years prior, she bought me the PS3, and it was the Fat Boy. It was the first model. And a few years later, after the release of the PS3, she bought me Red Dead Redemption, and she said it's because a coworker of hers talked about it and said that it was really good, and it was the Old West, and she read the description on the back of the box, and she loves the Old West. I got into the Old West things because of her, Clint Eastwood, for example. I fucking love Clint Eastwood. And after that, she picked it up for me, and she saw me play it a little bit, and she really loved it. And yeah, that's how my journey into the Red Dead universe began. And I'm really happy she decided to listen to a coworker that day and picked it up for me. I'll always appreciate her for that.
Honestly, I cannot really recall why I bought this game. It's super weird, but hear me out. Like, I didn't see any trailers to Red Dead Redemption, and I didn't see any news or whatever towards it. I just simply saw it in the store, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pick this up and play it. It's like one of those moments where it's like you sort of have like some brain fog, and you see something in the store, and you just pick it up randomly. And then I heard all these people later on, like, when I picked the game up, that's when I started hearing all these people saying, oh, this game's like a 10 out of 10, it's like a 9, you gotta play it, you gotta buy it. It's like, I already bought it. And when I unpacked the game, I had no idea what to expect. I think one of my favorite YouTubers started covering it back in the past, and I was like, okay. So I'm just like strapped in at this point. And then I played Redemption 1, and I remember thoroughly like enjoying it, liking it, and appreciating it. Like, I was a huge Rockstar fan already, so I was in that sort of mindset where it's like, whatever they put out, it doesn't matter what it is, I'll pick it up. I had the same philosophy for Bully, where I had no idea about that game, no idea what it was, and I just simply bought it. So on the strength alone of their own franchises and, of course, notoriety, I decided to buy their games, and I thought it was a good decision, to be honest. Afterwards, I went back and I played Red Dead Revolver, and then I also played Redemption 2, which is going to be the popular one for like most people. So that's how I got into the franchise. Just random chance of seeing it on a store display and saying, okay, it's not many Old West games. There's only Gun that I remember from the past, and that's it. So morbid curiosity just won over at the end of the day. Next up is Rex. How did you get into Red Dead in terms of seeing it?
Okay, when it comes to Red Dead, mainly I got into it because I'm a huge lore nerd. I love deep, like, sinking my teeth into things. Red Dead is one of the series I've yet to do it to, but it is what introduced me to it. I just love video essays. And I was watching a dude who, Doug, and he was doing a comparison of Breath of the Wild versus Red Dead. Well, Red Dead Redemption 2, in terms of, like, open world RPGs. And he actually had a really good metaphor for it. It's like if you went into someone's kitchen to cook for them, and Zelda basically says like, here you go, here's what you can do, and you have like basically no ingredient, so you have to get creative. Whereas Red Dead is like, here you go, and the fridge is fully stocked, the pantry's fully stocked, so you can make whatever you want because it's much more abundant. So you don't really have to get as creative, since guns are both the best and the most readily available thing to deal with the threat.
That's interesting. I don't think we ever had like a in-depth food analogy for a game franchise, but you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it. I fuck with it. So, Slash, what about you? How did you get into Red Dead for your first time?
So Red Dead was a very unique franchise when it was coming out, and growing up, I had played a lot of the old Grand Theft Auto games, so I had been very accustomed to the Rockstar logo and attached to it. I remember, though, walking into my local game shop in about 2011, around that time, and my mother took me in there with about $50, and it was 2011, so about a year after the release. There were two games that I ended up picking out: Medal of Honor 2010, the reboot, and Red Dead Redemption. Needless to say, I played more Red Dead Redemption than Medal of Honor, and growing up in the South, I was very... Obviously, it's based on the West, but it's kind of Texas-based. So, like, being in the South, it was like having my own little history lesson of my own area. So, that's what helped me get into it. And I was among the theory community at such a young age. And even further into Red Dead Redemption 2, growing up, being an adult by that point. You notice all these different things going on. And with Red Dead, it was kind of an evolution of where Rockstar was taking their games. So it was just nice to experience that at the peak, at its height.
And Slash, you were done?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I was just making sure. All right, we're moving on to question number 2. How do you feel about the story of Red Dead Redemption 1 and the character of John Marston? Joey, we'll start with you first.
The character itself was something that, like, growing up, you can kind of, a little bit relate to that kind of, like, hardship of, the world, so to speak. Like, you're immediately dropped into that, like, world of, like, okay, it's not an easy life for this character. So already it opens up strong, and it has, like, that very impactful opening, at least for myself, when I first opened the game, and that was something that really really brought forth that interest for it for myself, and kept me in the loop with the character, was just how the interactions and stuff kind of went through. In terms of, like, the game overall, I will say that it turned out a lot more I guess you could say gritty. When you're, like, thinking old western, you're like, oh, it's gritty. It's kind of that, like, rough and tough ragtag old western style game. And while I do feel like the main character represents that, even in the zombie cut-off secondary story, which that game again was the one I started with, so that was something that also kind of threw me for a loop when I played both that and the original. So, I mean, yeah, the character itself plays out pretty well. So, really enjoyed it.
All right, I had an interesting Discord glitch where it cut off Suge's name. I don't know why the fuck that happened, but Suge, I want you to do the first question and the second one if you can, please.
God, I got skipped. It's insane.
No, you're
But
good.
anyways, it's all good. So the way that I experienced Red Dead was a friend of mine told me to get it, and it was like during the summer or so. So I had enough time to get my hands on it and play it throughout most of the summer. Overall, the game was very fun, but all I really did was play the online. I never actually played the story of the first game. So it was a bit more of a different experience in terms of some other people that probably actually played through the story and whatnot. To this day, I've never actually finished it. I know how it ends and all that, but I've just never actually finished it myself. So, my experience was playing with a lot of friends. We had, it was always an enjoyable experience in the online mode. And I think that's really what made me a fan into it. I mean, like I've always been a big fan of Westerns. So, not into the westerns of like fucking the other movies that we see these days of Clint Eastwood and whatnot. But I was just a fan of like Tombstone and all that stuff. So I always enjoyed anything that had to do with the western in general. So that's probably the main reason why I even got the second game too. So how do I feel? On the second question is how do I feel about Red Dead in general? I like it. It's fun. It's interesting. John Marston, on the other hand, I do like John. I enjoy him as a character. He was very pretty interesting character, even in the second game or prequel game. So he was always a character that I liked protecting, and having to do missions with him in general were always good. Nothing really bad. You didn't find him as annoying as some other characters that are very annoying in the second game. So, that was pretty much a fun experience having to see him be in the second game also, and the first game, basically.
Cryo, it's your turn. What do you think about Red Dead Redemption 1 and the character of John Marston?
Honestly, for a game at the time, even to this day, it's still really amazing, like the amount of work and effort that was put into it, because at that time period, it really was unheard of to create a game on the scale of Redemption, because I mean, also the fact that the game used mocap, which it was primitive at this point. This was Rockstar's first attempt using mocap. And so obviously, as you were playing through the game, you can see like there's parts where you look at the way people are moving, and you're like, that's really weird. It's because of the mocap and the room that they would do it in. And as far as John, like, he's a very relatable character, because let's honestly face it, we've all done like awful shit in the past that we've tried to redeem for. So me personally, I feel very connected to John. Him and his path of wanting to redeem himself, go out the way he wants to, and not as an outlaw, but as a person, as a human, because he knows he's done awful shit. He's accepted it, but he also wants to change for the better until the day he dies. So I like him as a character. He was very relatable to the audience.
I'm gonna give my thoughts since I am next. All right, Red Dead Redemption 1. As for just what I think about it and just everything in general, it's it's a simple answer. It's a fun game. Again, I know a lot of people are gonna say it's for another question, but they're gonna say it's like GTA but Old West, and I guess you can kind of essentially say that, but it builds on with so many layers that I'm going to talk about later. It's just that the characters are a lot more fleshed out in certain cases. Not saying that like those characters in GTA are bad, but in Red Dead they take them to a whole new level. As for John Marston himself, I think number one, the outlaw Old West theme, so you're gonna have that, and his interesting cast of characters, like, going after Javier or going after Bill, or seeing how he goes after these people because his family is captured. So that's very relatable as well. You got the family man aspect there, and also just him trying to redeem himself throughout the whole story, where he's like, he was known as this monstrous like outlaw the whole time, and you get like glimpses of it, you get context of it, and you also see that other people are worse than John in the story itself, namely the side missions as well, where someone killed like a woman or something, claimed her as property, and John's like, okay, it's your turn, I'm going to get my money back. So there is a lot to the Wild West, and it's wild for a reason, and I think trying to be honest in those circumstances leads to a lot of turmoil in the plot as we progress, which is why I like the story so much, because you never knew what was going to happen with John's past trying to catch up to him, which is one of the great things about the game. So I was heavily pulled into that around, I want to say, the end of the first chapter in the game, where you're just going around doing random missions, and then it picks up even more when you start to go outwards and go into Mexico. So I really like that stuff a lot. I think it's a testament of time, and it's a fantastic testament of the storytelling of Rockstar, because they're very good at it, they know what they're doing, and they not only enhanced it, but they enhanced the character study as well. So that's one thing to really like about Red Dead 1, and the online was super fun. I recommend anyone, if it's still active, to go and try to get a session going or do a LAN party, please. And that's my answer to that. So Rex, it's your turn. Do you have any opinions on the story of Red Dead Redemption 1?
Not really. All I gotta say is just, to quote Arthur Morgan, I don't speak German neither. Like, again, I'm not going to be contributing much this episode. Like, most I'll do is quote some memes when I don't have anything to say.
No, that's fine. Next up is Slash. How about you? Do you have any opinions on the first Red Dead?
Well, the first Red Dead is very interesting to talk about in the year of our Lord 2024. It's a 14-year-old game, so obviously a lot of the aspects are going to be very outdated in retrospect. But I feel like the story of Red Dead Redemption 1 is some of the best writing Rockstar has ever done. Now, Rockstar has written some fantastic games. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, L.A. Noire, Bully, even Red Dead Redemption 2. But I feel like Red Dead Redemption was their peak. They've perfectly laid out every element of the story to perfection. There's nothing that feels too fast or too slow. It all kind of blends together well. And the character of John Marston is also one of their best. John, at first, would seem like the generic protagonist tough guy. But there's layers upon layers of his story that you end up finding out by progressing through the game. And I felt like that was genius. Introduce this character that you don't think you're going to care too much about, but then strike chords in your heart to the point that you're going to get attached to this character, even though the developers know what they're going to do at the end. And they did, albeit repeat this for Red Dead Redemption 2, but to diminishing returns in certain aspects. Red Dead Redemption just felt like lightning in a bottle. I don't think we'll ever see a story like Red Dead Redemption 1 again, and I don't think I ever want that to happen, because it remains unique in its own little bubble of the Rockstar games. Personally, John is top 5 characters of all time. So it's, again, not my favorite character of all time, but top 5. Uh, he's just got so much complexity. And albeit we don't know much about his past at the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 1, which is a big driving force of that game, you can infer it through context clues with his conversations with like Bill, Javier, and Dutch. And Red Dead Redemption 2 following up on all that was perfect. Albeit a weaker character in Red Dead 2, just like the story, but all around a well-built character. Wish we could see more of him, but I don't want to. So that's all I got to say.
All right. So we're going to move on to question number 3, which is Red Dead Redemption 2. So what do you think of Rockstar's approach with Red Dead Redemption 2, it being a prequel to the first one? And Arthur Morgan, was never an established character in Red Dead Redemption 1 beforehand. So this is all new that they're trying to add to Red Dead Redemption 2. On top of that, what do you think of Arthur's character and the plot of that game? And I'm going to start with Joy first.
Well, let's see. Red Dead 2, I think, in a very unpopular opinion, I just don't care for it. Not as much as I did the first game. Now, that being said, I do like the gameplay aspects. I think the gameplay's fine. I think all the added things that they put in is perfectly fine. But to kind of put it in words that Slash said, I think that 2010 was honestly like that golden age that we had like a whole bunch of video games coming out. I mean, that's when we had like Halo Reach, we had Fallout New Vegas coming, we had Call of Duty Black Ops come out, BioShock 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Mass Effect 2, Alan Wake, like we just had this golden age of games come out during that time. So it's really hard for me to get into a lot of the newer stuff, especially with like Red Dead 2's story. I enjoyed it being a prequel and whatnot. I think wholeheartedly it could have been done better. And I think they rehashing the ending for me really killed it. I mean, it's my biggest hot take that I get crap for all the time, but I think rehashing an ending because it was impactful the first time doesn't make it impactful a second time. I mean, if you look at like even movies, I mean, Marvel, when they did the whole Thanos snapped everyone out of existence, that was like their big ass, like, oh my gosh, like he won. And then like the ending to that story was that, Tony Stark snaps his fingers and it restarts it. It's like you can't do something similar the second time around and get the same result. So I mean, like I said, unpopular opinion for sure, but I mean, if you have any questions about it, man, feel free.
The only thing I think I have to say about it is that, well, I've never heard anyone say that for Red Dead Redemption 2, so that's interesting. I guess I can kind of see the perspective of, oh, well, they have a main character, he dies, whatever. It's par for the course for this one, but I think that it was still impactful for people just because they did not expect Arthur to be just as good as John, which is probably one of the things why people were kind of like, oh, well, I think this death resonates or whatever, because he's just as cool of a character and I like his story. So I can see the other side as well, where people kind of like it. But I also heard complaints of people saying, well, this epilogue with John is kind of slow and tedious, but it does lead to a similar conclusion where it's like, oh, now you're gonna get your revenge against Micah. And well, honestly, I had fun shooting him in the head. I think that was fun for starters. So but I respect it, but I also have never heard it explained that way, so that's just very interesting.
Yeah, definitely have some interesting takes on it, just because it's maybe I'm just a little critical of it, but I also am not the biggest fan of Rockstar's writing in terms of like their newer stuff. It's just never been the same. since they kind of released like some hotter games, like they were saying, like Bully and stuff like that. Like that, just their previous Golden Age games, I think, were really what put them on the map. And then again for Red Dead 2, I couldn't get as drawn into the world because of just kind of like the style that they were going after and the similarities between the two games. Like, in all honesty, I guess in my opinion, strictly my opinion, it felt like one big rehash of a story. Yeah, I mean, definitely not something that I'd say anywhere else, but
Anyone else want to chime in on this before we move on to the next person?
I mean, I I definitely do understand that take, but for me it was less of rehashing it and more so of continuing the point of Red Dead Redemption, which is there is no happy ending. There is no happy ending. It's
fair. That's
like
totally fair.
it's as Dutch said at the end, they'll always find a monster, any way for them to justify their wages. He says there's no point in, pretty much says there's no point in running. He's like, the past will still catch up to us no matter what we do. Our time is over. So we might as well just face gravity before yeeting himself off the cliff.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I think
But I definitely do understand where you're coming from, though. Like,
I think that the idea I'm trying to pass on. Sorry for cutting you off, but I think the idea I'm trying to come across is like, although those ideas have been neat and they've been played into Red Dead Redemption 1, I really, really, really love that game. And that's like to say, like, Undead, like Nightmare is fantastic. Red Dead 1, fantastic. Like, I love them, and I love the prompts and the ideas and the story elements that go into it that kind of speak volumes about, human nature and why the Wild West was wild, because, at the end of the day, no one really escapes what ultimately is, in their Rockstar storytelling, like, is death in some way, either egotistical or realistic. But so the problem that I have with 2 is that it just takes those ideas and it goes nowhere different with them. It just kind of plays out the same lines, just with different voices, different characters, but it's like, to remake the same ideas in the same way is where I take offense to that. It's just like, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, well, like, come on, man. Like, like, we know that, like, an impactful character death is impactful. Like, we know that his whole journey is him getting redemption. He finally gets it, and then, oh, well, he dies because, he gets, what is it? I think it's tuberculosis. It's like, man, like, that's kind of, like, shitty. Like, like, you went through all that just to die by the hands of something you had no control over. So it was interesting. It just is something in my mind that just kind of like, I think Rockstar could have taken it and kind of like dished it out a little bit better, or at least different, in my opinion. It's just like, I just wanted something that was like gonna give me that same impactfulness, but in a different light, was pretty much what I'm trying to get at.
I see what you're saying, but I want to add, like, while I may not know all of the details, I kind of like the finality and just grim aspect of Arthur dying of tuberculosis. He knew he was going to die. He knew this was going to happen, and he accepted his fate. He made peace with it.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those, like, you are given an ultimatum, and that ultimatum has already been chosen for you type deal. So again, to go out and take the time to go, get your redemption quote unquote, is just it is a cool story aspect. And by no means, like I said, did I hate Red Dead 2. I don't think it's the worst thing to ever happen. I mean, I did love the gameplay. I think they improved a lot on the stuff that they needed to in the first game. They definitely fixed a lot of the problems and definitely added a lot more things that made it feel better to play in. And a lot of the storylines along those lines, a lot of the storylines I actually did very much enjoy. And some of them were well written and very well, created, crafted, and whatnot. But again, with just overarching story. But I'll stop harking on it for sake of time.
All right, yeah. The only thing I think I just have to say is, it can be a similarity, but again, as I said, it doesn't stop it from being impactful if it's just simply written well. I think that's the thing here, is that because no one believed that Arthur, like the initial response to Arthur was they thought he wasn't going to be good or fit into the story at all. Like that was the thing that people were saying. Like, how is this guy that was never in the prequel is going to fit into it? And somehow they made it kind of work. Although granted, I will talk about that as in like some of the stuff they did where it's like, oh well, you're gonna have certain characters move to Canada or whatever to get that out of the way, and so some of these outlaws from the crew never came back. But again, the way I look at that is, it is kind of a way to write them out of the story and write them out of Red Dead Redemption 1, but it's also believable in a sense, because look, if I'm an ex-outlaw and everyone's killing each other and everyone's betraying each other and I have information on that, I'm gonna get the fuck out of there. So I think that made perfect sense to what it was. As for Arthur's death, I kind of one of those people that I knew that it was gonna happen eventually, because in order to really like have both of the stories be told, you have to kill him off because he doesn't exist in the first one. So I was just waiting on when that was gonna happen. I thought he was gonna randomly get shot in a gang hideout with Dutch and all that other stuff, but apparently I was just like completely thrown for a loop. And the first time I noticed it is when he was falling over in the town of I think it was Saint Denis. And then, he's trying to figure out, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I all sick all of a sudden? It's like, you have TB. And then I thought to myself, oh, it's from the guy who spit on him earlier, because I barely noticed that shit at all. But yes, that did happen before in the story. I was like, yeah, since he has TB, he doesn't have like the medical attention and stuff like that we have now, because TB's like, it doesn't mean anything to us these days. So he was completely fucked from 6 ways from Sunday, and the rest was just him trying to do the best good he could while living with that mortal dilemma that, yeah, you're gonna pass away pretty soon, dude. So I can get why aspects of the story is indeed slow. It is slow in bits, especially the first chapter as well, because that takes a while before you get running in the snow and everything. It's like snow everywhere. But they are setting up the characters. When the game opens up at its most, I think that's when Red Dead 2 gets the most interesting. I went on record before and said this. The game has the most interesting side missions I could think of, where it actually ties in, makes a story, and not a lot of games do that. You get your copy and paste Ubisoft marker maps and you go and you find this and you find that, and it's like, I still do like some of their games, but most of their side missions in some of the recent like titles have been like fetch quests, and Red Dead didn't do that. They decided to do like full fleshed out side missions that actually constitutes towards something, or like you can bring up Ghost of Tsushima where they give you like different weapons for doing things. That's cool. So yeah, I appreciate what they did so far. Could you have sliced down Guarma just a little bit? Yeah, maybe. But it doesn't overstay its welcome, for sure, when you get to that map and you're just wondering, okay, now everything's just random cannonballs and you're in the middle of this war. So I did think that broke the pacing up just a little bit, but hey, you got to spend some time with the boys and be shipwrecked. So, I mean, I guess that was kind of cool seeing it. Overall, though, I really liked the game. I put in like 120 hours, so you could kind of tell I really, really liked it from playing it that long. And I'll talk about everything with Red Dead Online and everything else with it. I really didn't jump into that aspect for the second one, but for the first one, I kind of did. And that's my opinion on Red Dead Redemption 2 so far. Great game, great title, and for the stuff that fans were saying it wasn't going to work out, some of it did work for the better. Next, we have Rex. Do you have any sort of opinions on the story of Red Dead 2, or is that it? Rex, you there?
Yeah, I already kind of spoke my piece on this question.
Okay, I was just making double sure because I didn't want to miss anybody. But Cryo, what about you? Do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to briefly touch on something before I get my thought out, like the similarity,
Sure.
at least.
Sure, go ahead.
There's like a big difference between like the build up, because Red Dead Redemption was him trying to exist after being an outlaw, getting out of that life for the sole purpose of starting a normal like family, having a normal life. But as we all know, when you have a life of crime, there is no normality in it or normalcy. So with Red Dead Redemption 2, it's something different because Arthur had always been fighting this inside of him, whether or not he was good or bad, because he's had good people in his life, bad people in his life. Good neutral people like Mary, who said that he's a good person, but is very conflicted with herself because she knows there is no normal life with him if he's with the gang, if he's an outlaw. There is no normal romantic relationship with him if he's with the gang. And that's why she broke things off with him initially. And again, when you try pursuing her in Saint Denis, when she goes on that train, she says, "Oh, I know you won't change. You never will." And that hits Arthur hard because he's like, "Shit, he's right. I'm trapped in this life. There is no getting out of it except death." And that hit him even harder when he found out that he had tuberculosis at the doctor's office. When he found out, that really shook him even more, which is why they had the little echoes of his of his past, as he's walking through town, depending on how high your honor was. If you had a high honor, it would be good things. Like Arthur Morgan, you're a good man. If you have like low honor, it's really bad dialogue. And he's like fighting that within himself. Like, am I actually good? Am I actually a good person? And for the bad honor, he's like, am I actually a bad person? Like, am I really that bad? And it's all about how you go with it, But as far as my thoughts with Red Dead Redemption 2 as a prequel, I loved it because it had the same emotional factor that the first game had. And at first, I was neutral about Arthur because I'm like, it's going to be hard to top John because, the actor that played as him, his performance was amazing. But Roger Clark, he put so much oomph into like the character, the emotion that he brought out when he was with other actors. You could tell that everyone just could feel everyone else's energy, and it meshed so well with the performance. So yeah, I really loved it. It's right up there with Red Dead Redemption. Dare I say better than Red Dead Redemption.
Slash, it is your turn. What do you think of Red Dead Redemption 2?
Well, I think I gave a little tease of what I think about Red Dead Redemption 2 in the previous question, but with the diminishing returns, and I still stand by that. But I will say that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a well-written game, certainly better written than GTA 5, but we won't get into that. I feel like Red Dead Redemption 2 was naturally going to suffer the prequel curse, which is things are going to be very predictable. The game itself starts out with a "Where's John? Where's John? Where's John?" and it ends with a "Where's John? Oh, he's dead." You know, with the entire game, I feel like they could have tweaked around a few chapters. Chapter 3 for me was way too fucking long, personally. I feel like they could have trimmed the fat off of that a bit. Guarma, like you said, could have been tweaked back a little bit. You didn't really need it there. Arthur as a character, this is going to be very contradictory to what I said earlier. But I feel like Arthur is a much better character than John in certain aspects. I feel like and it's due to the subversion he had, the subversions he was giving throughout the game. Because, you know, leading up to release, we were like, like Arthur's not going to be as great as John. How can they ever live up to John? And it's very much a testament to Roger Clark's performance as Arthur Morgan. One of my favorite lines that I think embodies Arthur to a T is right after you get to Valentine and after you chase, what's his name? Jimmy Brooks. One of my favorite lines he says is, "That's very kind of you." After you save him, and he gives you the pen, he says, "Well, that's very kind of you. But I'm going to be honest with you, Jimmy Brooks. I was in Blackwater, and you did see me. I'm not a good man." And it's something along those lines. It's not word for word, and I'm very much paraphrasing there. But Arthur had so many great lines to his character that I feel like John was really lacking in the first game. John wasn't very... A lot of it was more John's journey rather than about what was going on, about like his conflictions with everything going on around him, as well as his actions. I felt like he was very guided by the player in the first game sometimes. But Arthur was not something for the player to put their emotions on in any sort of aspect. He was his own full-blown character that could have been a side character. Rockstar could have wussed out and made John the main protagonist, but they took a risk that they knew would pay off. And Arthur is the biggest risk possible. And going back to his death, I feel like his death is diminishing compared to John's, because Arthur's death is just naturally known. Everybody knows it's going to happen because, like you said, Arthur's not in the first game. So, and I feel like that really plays into that's not really the worst thing imaginable for some people. I know that like Red Dead Redemption 2 to a very small minority is like, oh, the worst thing that could ever happen to the Red Dead universe because it throws everything for a loop. It adds gang members we never knew about. But it's like we knew it was a big gang the whole time. With Arthur, I feel like John and everybody in the gang shutting up about Arthur's passing is kind of logical to a T, because Arthur represents the past of the gang, the good-willed nature of the gang that was lost when Micah infected it. And once Micah had infected it all, Arthur was the only one there that was a shining light. And once he died, bringing that up just brings back horrid memories of that day for those characters. And Again, it might be fan fiction, but it's my personal headcanon. It is my personal headcanon to those games. But I feel like that's kind of what they were going for in the aftermath. Now, would I have liked them to, like, in the port of Red Dead Redemption, would I have liked them to add something about Arthur, maybe add a grave up near where he died? Yes, I would have loved that. But you can't have it all. And with Red Dead Redemption 2, I feel like we got it all that we wanted. Just, it is an acquired taste, is all I will say.
Shug, what about you? What are your thoughts on Red Dead Redemption 2?
I personally enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, I didn't really play the story of 1, and mainly because I had found out how the game ends, so I kind of just like, whatever, I'm not gonna play it then. So when I got to 2, I would say I enjoyed it even off the beginning. I was mainly thinking of, who the fuck is this guy? Why am I not playing John? Who of course I've known that John was the Red Dead dude basically, and over time, even off of like in the beginning of the game, I started liking Arthur, and I personally think I like Arthur a bit more than John, but I think they're both in the same of like, I like both of them. They just have their own different qualities of what to like at times. But like I went into it, I was like, who the fuck is Arthur? Why is this dude here? And I ended up just liking him. I took a pause on the game for maybe however long the game was out until last year, and I finished it last year. And there comes a point where you really just start to feel bad for Arthur, because while he's not a great human being, he was at least trying to be a good person at times. And he always tried to help people and make sure that they're okay and they're not in any danger of them helping them in other situations. And I like that part of him. And so whenever it just happens and you're doing all this shit towards the end of the game, and he just, basically takes a last stand so John can run away and not die, was a very good way to like seal the end for his character. It's like a trying to be like a very honorable character, and to be a very I don't know if this is like justice driven, but more of like trying to be just helping people survive and be different than how he was. And I like that. And so like the story in general, I was a big fan of it, and even after finding out how it really ends, honestly. But I just wanted to finish it because why not? And it was worth it. Even I was very sad when it happened, and then they throw you into the epilogue. They didn't really hate it. They didn't really like it too much because it was slow. I will agree, but it wasn't too bad either. I was able to just still run around and do whatever with John too.
All right, we're moving on to another interesting question, which is question number 4. Are there any characters or NPCs within Red Dead Redemption 1 or 2 that you love or hate that you want to mention here? And we'll start with Joy first.
Well, obviously, I'm a big fan of our main protagonists in both games. I think John and Arthur are fantastic characters, and I think they are written really, really well. And of course, my statement earlier saying that I didn't care too much for the story doesn't mean I didn't care for the storylines. Like you were saying, Ren, like the side quests, I think make the game. I think that's what really makes the game, in my opinion, as well. Like the main story, if you just played the main story, I feel like you'd miss out on so much, and you'd miss out on like really what builds the entirety of it. I love the main characters for how they are relatable, kind of like everyone has been kind of saying this whole time. And it's like, honestly, like everything that's been kind of put up, statement wise, as in like how the characters react, how they're kind of dealing with the inner working mechanisms of a human mind. I mean, you also kind of got to think too that like, I mean, they are dealing with some weird stuff, especially in the time period that they're thrown into. Like, I mean, it really is Wild West. Like, you could get shot any point, any day. You piss off the wrong guy, you could die the next day. And that is something they live with every single day of their lives. And that is something that becomes more and more apparent as you continue to play and continue to get like your either your infamy or not. You know, like all across that, it's got to be hard as a character, and for all of them to kind of like have and develop and do all these things like with the main character storylines, I really like that. My number one thing that I do not like is any love interest characters, because they're always a little off, and you know it's like for me. I think it's funny because all the love interest characters are in love with these main characters, and it's like you're aware that you're aware of their background and their everything like that, and it's like I get it. I do understand the point is like, oh, they love them for the person that they are, not the person that they were, or whatever. And like, oh yes, you can't move past your past the gang stuff and everything. Like, you're not really ever gonna be normal, blah blah blah. Like, I understand all this story stuff, but I do just think it's silly when they do have a love relationship, and it's like, for them to try to accept or expect that it works in the end is definitely the one thing I get some joy out of. But that's my take on those little favorites and my not favorite characters.
Cryo, what about you? How do you feel about the other characters or NPCs that you love or hate in Red Dead?
Well, as I said, at least character-wise, you could tell, like, considering the fact that it wasn't voice acting, they were acting, as Roger Clark brought up, and he still takes offense to anyone that calls him a voice actor in Red Dead Redemption 2. And for good reason, because he didn't wear that mocap suit for his health. But you could tell everyone's energy as they work together. It like I mentioned before, without sounding like a broken record, like, it just worked so well. Like, these NPCs that interacted with the characters, the main characters interacting with each other, it really worked amazingly. As well as the fact that Micah, for example, the energy he brought with his body movement, like his cockiness, thinking he was one step ahead of everybody, with the whole grand scheme of things, like his plan, which backfired in the end. Like, I really loved it. And anytime I think of NPC, I think of the one person from Red Dead Redemption. It's me, Herbert Boone. I always think of the racist shopkeep in Armadillo. I always think of Herbert Moon. Yeah. But yeah, that's my quick thought on it. I liked it, especially how they also made fun of like some of the NPCs for making dumb decisions when clearly there was easier ways of getting out of the situation. Especially some of the side content and the random events, like the guy working on his horse's shoe, and if you distract him, he gets kicked in the head by the horse and dies immediately. Just things like that. I loved it.
All right. as for characters, there's a lot of them, and especially a lot more NPCs in Red Dead. I'm just gonna name off just the popular ones. Obviously, like Dutch is a pretty cool multi-layered character, where you have to really think about, oh, is he rational in this sense, or is he crazy in this sense? I like how they also toy with the fact that he hit his head, so that may have changed his whole personality entirely. It's like a good little setup that they do in the second game and elaborates on it really well. Characters I love to hate, well, you all know Micah. I'm glad I put like 3,000 bullets into his fucking head, because that is a character that you love to hate, dude. I think everyone just hates him at this rate, and for good reason too, because of what he does in the story. But still, that is another character that I got satisfaction from when I shot him at the end, as well as like cool characters like Sadie Adler, like the lady that was taken in the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2, and then she, you know, becomes a companion, and she's one of the badass like female outlaws. I thought that was pretty cool as well. Characters in Red Dead Redemption 1, like, you know, you see the foundation of the gang, and you see how you know, all of it just went downhill from there, and them being holed up like rats after being like ousted out was pretty interesting, to say the least. And then you run into people in the city, just remember that, and there's a lot of other eccentric people as well. I also thought, I forget his name, but I know he's one of the Pinkerton people, one of the cops that has like John's like wife, I think it's Ross. He was also like just menacing, and you couldn't tell when he would flip on a dime and go crazy or be calm and maintain, and that was one of the very interesting villains of that game. I really enjoyed that. So it's a lot of cool characters in Red Dead that you come across. Even the scientist making his robot in Red Dead Redemption 2 was kind of cool, because I'm like, oh, they're doing this whole Frankenstein thing. This fucking robot's not gonna work. It fails, and you just see all the funny stuff happen in between. Definitely the funniest moments stick out to me a lot more in the open world and the environment like a sore thumb, because it's so cool that like everyone seems so different and unique in a sense, along with the main characters. So it's plenty to love and plenty to hate at the same time, and I think they do a good job at both. Next up is Slash. What about any NPCs or characters, side characters that you liked in Red Dead Redemption 1 or 2?
Well, I actually have an interesting NPC that I really appreciate to this day, and it is the Strange Man in Red Dead Redemption, or as very popular, or as people very well versed in the theorist community would know him, the Grim Reaper. The Strange Man was one of those characters that I love in a video game, where he is introduced and is vague as fuck. I love that type of character. And he only appears about 3 times in the original Red Dead Redemption, but each time he leaves an impact, constantly judging John's life and his choices. Asks him to go confront a man about to cheat on his wife, or talk to a nun, and then finally overlooks Beecher's hope. The Strange Man himself is one of those characters that we're never going to know much about, but we can infer a lot about. His entire like character, despite the 3 interactions, you can tell from his demeanor, the way he talks, the way he walks, it just gives off that uneasiness that no character in the games can ever match. There's not much else I can say about him. One side character I don't really like is, surprisingly, Bill in Red Dead Redemption 2. I felt like Bill was less charismatic than he was in the original Red Dead Redemption. He had a lot of very funny lines in that game, and just naturally, I just don't know what happened with his writing in the second game. all of the gang have very colorful, very unique personalities, but Bill just didn't really stand out anymore. He was very Rudy Tooty Shooty in the original Red Dead Redemption. The first time you meet him, he's got this laugh. He's got this very distinct laugh that you can still hear in your head after he shoots John. But in the second game, he just doesn't have anything going for him. He's just thrown off despite being one of the main villains of the first game. He's one of the less important characters. Now, of course, like, we all know our favorites, like Lenny, or like one of the best written villains ever, Micah, Dutch, Hosea, Strau. Even some of the NPCs that are involved with the debt collecting missions, they're very well written, and they offer this sort of moral judgment in the game, kind of like the Strange Man. See, going back to him, they were kind of replacements for that character, and I really liked how it really toyed with your sense of morality in those missions, because Red Dead Redemption 2's biggest net positive is the choice mechanic. I feel like its choice mechanic, there's little details that are always going to change depending on the choice you make. Far more than a Telltale game as well. So, your complete playthrough can be different every time depending on the choices you make. Different cutscenes, and it's really aspiring how much work was put into the game through the NPCs. And I feel like the level of interactions you can have with them in Red Dead Redemption 2 as well are some of the most diverse and in-depth. I don't know if GTA 6 will ever live up to that, but we will have to see.
I want to, before I continue onward, I want to come to the defense of Bill real quick. So I think he's more mellowed out in Red Dead Redemption 2 because that was a little bit like the gang didn't really splinter apart just yet. And if I remember correctly, I think Bill has like paranoia. So as the gang splintered and when Dutch started to kill like more men and hang out with them, I think that's when he started to get gradually worse, and that's when he kind of went crazy and insane. And I want to also touch up on the Strange Man. Now, this guy is a very fascinating character. They leave these little tidbits here. Clearly they're trying to set up that whatever this man is, he is a supernatural entity. One of the things that people have said and pointed out is that in the last cutscene, when he walks away, John shoots him, nothing happens, and he says something like, well, yeah, this is a good place as any, this is a good resting spot, I think it'll do. People actually, yeah, they actually said that that is the final place where John dies in the story.
It was because that's
where he's buried, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then the Strange Man begins to, he has his back still turned to him, and John and not more so anger, more so like annoyance because of how cryptic he is. He says, "Damn you," and the Strange Man says, "Yes, many men have," and that's when he tries to shoot him. And he's like, wait, and he's just looking at his gun, and you see the Strange Man.
Did he empty his old? He emptied his whole gun in his back. Nothing happened.
And
so
he's accurate too.
Mag dumped the motherfucker.
Yeah,
that's what even more like bonkers about it is John is very accurate with his shooting. So there's no way he missed that close up like that. So that's why he was looking at the gun, like, what's going on with this gun? And he's like, "See you around, John." Or "See you soon, John," or something like that.
They also have like writing as well that elaborates more of these cryptic pieces of story, because there is strange man writings that you can find in Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think one of them also signify Arthur's death as well if you find like the scriptures and text. So it's I would like to see them go into more detail with this character if they decide to make like Red Dead Redemption 3 and see what hauntings he actually does, because I think those would be like cool side missions regardless.
Yeah, definitely. Since like the shack and everything like that, the writings in it, the design of it inside, like the furniture, it's all based on how you go about Arthur's path. If you do good stuff, I think it's a deer. A deer's head is hung up on the wall, and on the table, scribbled, it shows what you did with I think Jimmy, the writer, who said like, I saw you at Blackwater and everything. It's written on it. It's a riddle, like a poem, and it says what Arthur did. And as you do more and more things in the game, you see there a painting, and it looks very fucked up. But the more things you do, I think after you get 100% completion, the painting turns into the strange man, and John looks in the mirror, and the strange man is right behind him. You look around, he's not there. You look at the mirror again, he's right there. Like he's watching you the entire time. One of the most freakiest things that I've ever seen like online. I've been wanting to do 100% completion because of that, just to witness it for myself, but I've gone so close. But
I'm just gonna be trying to shoot him the whole time. I don't even care if my bullets don't work. But Shug, what about you? Are there any characters you want to mention that you love or hate in the Red Dead series?
I love Charles. Charles is my best friend. And anytime I did a mission with him, I loved it. Anything I had to do with Charles, I loved his missions. I think his missions were very interesting and very very different, with the fact that you had to deal a lot with Native Americans, and I like that. I feel like that was probably one of my favorite parts of the game, dealing with the Native Americans and see how they were living during those times. And I just enjoyed the presence of Charles. I think Charles had a really good, like, strong presence whenever he was with you. I think he was always like a very strong-minded character at times. So like I did enjoy him, and he didn't really have too many meltdowns compared to other characters. And like he kind of, if I remember correctly, he kind of did at some point. I don't remember how it was, but it got cleared fairly quickly during the mission and whatnot. But like I liked him a lot, and I like Miss Adler, and she was also pretty good. I liked her character also, which was very revenge centered. And I don't know, I just liked her. I liked her voice. I liked seeing her. I like just doing missions with her, because her was just like, hey, want to shoot somebody? I want to kill this son of a bitch. Come with me. And like, oh, okay, I'm going. So like I always just like how high octane her missions were, just off the bat kind of deal. Before you even get any kind of context, she's like, I'm gonna shoot this son of a bitch. Come with me. And so, like, I would say those two are probably my favorite characters. They're very different to each other, of course. And I think I enjoyed their missions a lot more than anything with, like, fuck Micah, fuck Dutch. Dutch was annoying as shit with his, wherever he wanted to go. And he didn't even know where the fuck he was going. He was just saying names and shit. He was like, oh, we're going here. Oh, well, now we're going here. Change your plans. So, like, he was annoying as shit. Micah was annoying as hell. If I could have shot Strauss, I would have shot him too. It's like I didn't really had too many hate. Like, I hate every character that pretty much everybody else hates, honestly. And just the two that I like are there. They're like my top two characters next to Arthur, also, who I really liked about that game in general.
All right, so we're moving on to the next one, which is, so what people like to do is they like to compare the two series together. And I mean, open world, I understand GTA and Red Dead, but what makes Red Dead stand out a little bit more? And, you know, if you were to compare and contrast with the gameplay and story, what is your overall thoughts on people saying this? I'm gonna have Joey go first.
Sorry, one more time. Can you just reiterate the question?
So
Maybe I didn't understand it.
people like to compare Red Dead and GTA a lot in terms of the gameplay, and it makes sense for the gameplay because two open world games. But how do you feel about both of them when you compare the gameplay and the story?
Oh, okay, yeah. If you phrase it like that, yeah. It's. I think that it's a stark difference. I don't know why people try to compare the two games, other than that they're Rockstar games, in my opinion. I mean, to say like, oh, GTA 5 is so similar to this because you have the same kind of outlaw stuff where you're like going out and you do something wrong and you get chased and you have people on your tail and blah 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 blah. It's like, yes, there's similarities. We definitely know the similarities between the games, but at the same time, I think there's just such a stark contrast between them that it's really, really, really hard for me to kind of separate them that way, or like, compare them that way. Because if you play GTA like San Andreas or 5, or hell, you even play like the older generations, I mean, which I have tinkered a little bit with them. I would never compare the two games, mostly because I hate comparing games already, because I feel like, yes, there's like some similarity to it, but you have to take it for its individuality versus its similarities to other things, just because I just don't feel like there's too many things that are similar. And you can take that with any game, not just GTA. You can also say like, oh, this is similar to, XYZ other game, or blah 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 blah. It's like you could do so, and the only reason that I know people take their time in establishing those connections is so that we kind of have like, oh, I know this game. Oh, so it's kind of like this. Oh, okay, so I can kind of understand what this is. But I also think that's like a dangerous thing that we've kind of come up with lately, as like a gaming society, so to speak. It's just like it's just interesting to me that we end up comparing a lot more things than I think we should, and instead give it the individuality it deserves. Just because the story itself is so out there and different compared to like a GTA game where you play the missions for like hell, I mean, I think GTA 5 was like not the last time I played it. I think I beat the main storyline in like a few hours. It wasn't that long, but it's like you go through, it's like, oh, but it's about the online, it's about this, it's about that. And then to compare it to this, come on, man. I mean, even doing the online is like an entire story in itself. You got your single player mode with all the storyline stuff, all the tie-ins, all the side quests, all this, all that. You got 100 different other things, and then to compare it to like GTA, they're just too different in my opinion to even compare them.
Ryo, what about you? How do you feel when people compare GTA and Red Dead?
Um, oh boy, that's actually a really good uh question. Uh, I mean, there's a stark difference between both of the both of the series. I mean, honestly, like I know this is still debatable because I know how people have hatred for GTA 5's story. Um, but like honestly, both Red Dead and Grand Theft Auto have good stories. Um, I know with GTA, some of the stories like it can be gripping. Uh, like for GTA 4. People really liked Nico. People liked his cousin. People like felt attached to those two characters. Um, but here's the biggest difference that a lot of people don't really talk about, I notice. If you pay close attention, like GTA for me, it is a what's the best definition for it? Like it's like it's a parody. It's pure like parody what they're trying to do and everything. Like making a parody of like certain movies and putting that theme into the games. I know GTA 5 did it for like there's a few actually. I think they did a parody of like Heat or paid homages to it. Things like that, inspiration. Um but the story, it feels as though they were trying to take themselves seriously, but it was mostly a parody. But I feel it's much different with Red Dead because they're trying to tell an actual story that's heartbreaking and gut wrenching to the player. And it's just everything around you is a parody, but the story itself is not a parody. It reminds me a lot of like what the Scream movies do. I know most likely this is a hot take, but for me, comparing this is like comparing the Scream movies to the Scary Movies series. That's what it's like in my opinion, because Scream is meta. It makes fun of like what's in current not population, but what's current like trends, for example. But instead of doing that for Red Dead Redemption, it's more so like taking itself seriously, but it's still a parody. It's making fun of like the Old West, whereas GTA is purely parody of the real world, if that makes any kind of sense. Um, but yeah,
Okay.
that's about it, anyways.
Okay. I have a bit to say on this. I'm just gonna, cause I mean, I'm more into just how people sort of perceive this stuff in the online Rockstar culture. So, people like to do this often, where they will say, "Hey, open world game, Grand Theft Auto, it's the same," and I always hated that mindset. Because it's like, you look at Bully, you look at LA Noire, sure, they're open world games, but the similarities just kind of in there. It's like, Bully, you're a freaking kid. You have to go to school and shit. You don't have to go to school in GTA. You can mow down civilians and shoot them in the face with a shotgun. You can't do that in Bully. Sure, you can shoot someone in the nuts with like a rocket launcher, firecracker, or whatever, or like a potato gun, but it's not like a violent sort of ordeal where you're killing someone. As for Red Dead, in this case, it's like, obviously it's Old West, so it's a lot more primitive in technology. You're gonna have like mostly horses only, maybe a stagecoach or a train, and that's it. GTA, you got planes and all this other stuff. So I think when people say these opinions, they don't factor in all the different stuff within the open world, and because of GTA's popularity, that's the first thing they look at and nothing else. Not every open world game is fundamentally and even mechanically the same all of the goddamn time. You might find similarities here or there, but again, with Red Dead, similarities start to end with how the theme is. I would say the story is even, you know, GTA has like a lot of jokes, and even Red Dead has like some jokey moments as well, but I feel like Red Dead in situations is a lot more serious at points, and it's not to downplay GTA at all, just that it felt like for Red Dead's case, this is a more mature sort of theme story. We're talking about vengeance, redemption, and all that other stuff, where it's like GTA is different with the criminals. So I just think that if we compare it and contrast it right, then it'll be fine, you know, because people do that all the time. But to look at something in a binary state and say, oh, it's just like this, so it must be the same or it must be inferior, is probably the wrong way to look at how GTA and Red Dead is coordinated. Because I feel that way each time I see these comparisons, or when Rockstar makes a game that's not GTA. Hell, I even see people compare linear games to GTA. I'm like, The Warriors is like far from Grand Theft Auto, so I don't know what people were talking about when they say stuff like this. But that's just how I feel about it. Sure, I see a little reference, that's fine. LA Noire has like the John Marston hat in the trash can that you can find. That's pretty cool. I like that reference, but still, it's like they sort of complement each other in different ways, and they're different from each other in a lot of ways. So Slash, do you have any opinions on this when people sort of make those claims and say everything needs to be like GTA or Red Dead is GTA, sort of saying that it's inferior in a way?
No, absolutely. I don't think Red Dead is in any way inferior to GTA. In fact, I think Red Dead is Rockstar's peak. Now, obviously, GTA has a lot more cultural significance, I believe. GTA 5 is one of the biggest games of all time. Grand Theft Auto 6 will be the biggest game of all time, as far as we're concerned, judging by how quickly it amassed 100 million views in a day on its trailer alone. But I feel like Red Dead Redemption 2 is like, it's their magnum opus, or not Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm sorry. The entirety of the Red Dead series is kind of their magnum opus. It's their test of writing very serious, grounded stories. Not to say GTA doesn't have serious, grounded stories. GTA 4 is one of the darkest stories they've ever told. But Red Dead Redemption 2 takes itself more seriously. As well as the gameplay of Red Dead Redemption 2 is far different, you know. They're just two different things. It would be like saying Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is very similar, is the same as Batman Arkham Knight, or Batman Arkham City, or Batman Arkham Asylum. You get it. Batman Arkham. It would be like that, which is completely and utterly pointless. I feel like people... Sorry. Oh! Where did that come from? Get a little burp in there while talking about Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm definitely not breaking Southern stereotypes. But, no, I feel like people are so hell-bent are dead set on a studio making one similar game. And I call those people fucking boring. Studios shouldn't be limited to making the same game. They should be able to creatively express themselves more. And I feel like Rockstar has been one of those studios who has kept trying to innovate. Even in their own franchises, no GTA game plays the same. No GTA game is the same. They all offer different experiences due to gameplay and presentation overhauls. Red Dead Redemption is the same way. And I feel like Red Dead really benefits from that serious tone as well. If it had these jokey moments, we wouldn't take the death of John Marston or Arthur Morgan very seriously. I feel like they would be kind of very shallow in their aspects. Kind of like how the death of Michael Townley, or Michael DeSanto, whatever you want, in GTA 5. His kill route is very boring, simply due to the fact that the chase is very comedic in a lot of ways. Rockstar is very hell-bent on making GTA a very satirical, very jokey little franchise with some goofy bits, and there's nothing wrong with that. That works for the GTA universe. It does not work for the Red Dead universe. Obviously, Red Dead plays some jokes. There are the Hermit, the grave-robbing Hermit from Red Dead Redemption 1, one of the funniest characters ever. I love him. But he's simply just another archetype of that world. GTA is filled with genuine stereotypes of different American people of the modern day. Red Dead Redemption is playing on a lot of what really was going on back then. They're not as much stereotypes in Red Dead Redemption as they are just the way people were. They're not over exaggerated. They are fine tuned to be very close to their real life counterparts. Now, obviously, you have your little fun moments in Red Dead Redemption, like Bigfoot, you know. But there's no similarities there, apart from having a big Rockstar logo and being third person and being open world. So it's something I don't get, and I feel like people just need to learn to accept that. Otherwise, they're going to drive themselves fucking mad when they see how Ubisoft really, because they're essentially putting a lot of their hatred on Ubisoft onto other game developers, I feel like. So, yeah.
I think it's just a case of people being like just immature to not know that two franchises can coexist. Like, even if they have similarities, and when they contrast as well, they can coexist. It doesn't have to be just one. And I agree with what you said, where it's like I would prefer them to innovate, either making new IPs or expanding IPs, as opposed to being like, well, we're gonna make like GTA forever. I would prefer them not to go down that route, to be honest, which is why I'm glad they made Red Dead in between before making GTA 6. Shug, do you have any opinions on this whatsoever when people just compare GTA like out the wazoo?
I mean, I've seen people compare GTA to everything.
Yeah.
Which is dumb, in all honesty. I feel like we've all said, GTA and Red Dead and Rockstar in general have kept pretty much their games to be like their own thing. It's like they have pretty much at this point mastered the formula of sandbox games, basically, if you really want to call it those. And I would say they 100% evolved. Every game that comes out is, like we said, they're all different. They all have different mechanics, different cars, different guns, different gunplay. I mean, fucking GTA 5 had the slow-mo with the vehicle and drifting, slow-mo with the shooting. And then you have, which basically was, I'm guessing, incorporated from the bullet time of Max Payne 3, and probably from what's it called, from the original Red Dead. They kind of just like, hey, let's put this on this game also. And when we get to games like Red Dead and whatnot, it's a different take on the past, on the Wild West. And I personally prefer Red Dead over GTA, mainly because I just like the West. I like the Wild West, but I still play them. I've enjoyed GTA. I've never finished many of them. I finished 4 and 5, but I feel like when people compare them to compare them to some stupid shit that has some sort of similarity to it, and they're like, you rob a person of their car and you steal it. Oh, just like GTA. And it's like, it's like any game could really just do that, and it's like, it's one of those things that people just do to think that they're sounding smart, but they're mainly just dumb about it, because either they don't play the game and they just try to talk something about it, or they just want to feel included in a way. So it's always, you always have those kinds of people, even now with anything that's not even Rockstar Games. So I feel like those games, while made by the same people, are always different every time they come out, no matter what, even if they do have the same name plastered every time. They're all going to be different in a way, especially with how long it takes them to make the games, because it takes a while for them to make games. So they're bound to be different by the time you've played GTA 5 for the past 10 years. GTA 6 is definitely not going to be the same as that one. Same with Red Dead 1 and Red Dead 2. They're completely different from each other in general. So comparing them, I would say in terms of how they do their characters and how they do their mission structures, how they do their gameplay, sometimes is a bit similar with the horses and like robbing people with the horses and carriages. but I would say even if they play the same at times, they're not really the same thing. Honestly, they all have their own magic. I would say that's what I think.
All right, so we're moving on to the next one, and I'm gonna set this up and go first on it because it needs some context. So I did see, and I put it on here, but there was controversy with Red Dead recently with the remaster. So I think this stemmed from people mostly being annoyed about how GTA Trilogy went down. And personally, like I said before, I must have got lucky because I did not get any of these glitches that people had, but I know folks were pissed about it. So they saw Red Dead was coming out again and they were super excited, but then they saw the price tag, $50, and then they also were thinking that maybe it was going to be compromised in some way. What do you think about this controversy and people thinking that it was going to be a butchered port? And honestly, that kind of got resolved when the game actually came out, because from what I heard, it came out like, well, with barely any issues whatsoever. It might have been a few marginal things at best, but I know the only thing that was a big deal was them not putting in 60 FPS, and that was sort of resolved like a little bit later on. So once again, I do think for a remaster, it's kind of a little bit steep. I'm not gonna lie, because it was almost like $60 at that rate. But at the same time, I've seen the game on sale like numerous times already on Xbox, so it's not even really hard to get or fathom. My only criticism is that I would have preferred them to try to put this on PC, because I know Red Dead 1 hasn't been on PC for the longest, and apparently the code is like all out of order. It's all weird. So I'm surprised they haven't really, done that yet in terms of Red Dead 1, or, what I would have preferred, which is hearing that Rockstar wanted to do a remake of that game, and we didn't get it because of circumstances. So go figure. That's kind of what I'm more bad about. It's like we could have got a GTA 4 remake and Red Dead 1, and because of some issues where they were focusing on GTA 6, that kind of got curved. So that's the only thing that I'm really reasonably pissed about. But in terms of everything else, it's just like it doesn't really matter. It's just like, just wait until the remaster goes on sale, pick it up. It was in a bundle with Red Dead 1, so I'm sure there were people who never played that game who wanted to try it as well, and they never witnessed the story before. That's what they do these things for in these collections in the first place. It's like, it's not always for you. It's sometimes for, hey, we want to put in a bundle, let people buy both games, and if they never played it, they'll pick it up, which is what they did with 1 and 2 later on, I believe, as a bundle. So I didn't see any big issues with it. I probably will pick it up soon. I haven't had the time to really get back into Red Dead. I played a little bit of 2 and that was it, but I'll go back to the first game when I get to it. So Joey, what do you think of this whole thing with the remaster? Do you have any thoughts on it whatsoever?
Yes and no. The biggest thing that I will say happens 90% of the time when it comes to when it comes down to like the overall people buying video games and stuff like that, is gonna be a controversy forever. I truly believe that. No matter what it is, I mean, the next RE remake, whatever it is, if it's 5, if they happen to, I mean, it's been well within the years for us to get another one if we wanted, but honestly, I don't think they'll remaster it. They might. That's up in the air for another time, but kind of the same idea is just like, it's always going to be a hot topic no matter what, because people are going to say, well, I was around when, such and such game came out on the GameCube, and now you're remastering it and it's $45, $50. Like, I paid $30 back in the day. It's like, yeah, but I think a lot of people kind of forget that remasters are something that takes like a fuckload of time to do, because you're not just essentially they're not just oh, well, let's just remaster it, give it new models, and slap on some new paint and call it good. They're also reworking bad code that from, a lot of the things, like, yes, we have games like this Red Dead, bundle had issues, but now, guess what? Since we have online servicing that's way more streamlined, those issues can get fixed over time. Like if something happens with a lot, like it's like initial release, and you're like, oh, this is a remaster. It has 10 original problems that it used to have, or it only has 5 from the original game. And then they can say, okay, let's take that feedback, fix those 5, call it a day. So you're not just paying for the entire, well, let's be honest, they're remaking all of the assets, which in itself takes a really long time to do. And people, I think, forget that the artistry is the part that takes the longest time and is probably the most expensive portion of everything. It's hard to kind of get over and say, like, oh, let's just say and call it $30. Like some remasters or remakes, people will argue, oh, well, they did it and it's the same price, $30. And you're like, okay, let's be honest, it can happen, but at the same time, we're talking about Rockstar. Okay? Hate to be that guy, hate to go there. They do a lot of like transactionals, like, microtransactions. I mean, hell, GTA 5 is riddled with them. So they're going to try to make money any way that they can by nostalgia factor. And the thing that I think people forget is, like, yes, it sucks. Yes, it's not fair. Yes, I understand that, we probably shouldn't be paying full price for what is something that's already been released for a long time. But it's like I always tell people, is like, you're not paying for the same game. You're paying for all the artistry that went into it. You're paying for all the updates that are to come that will fix the issues that used to happen all the time. Because back then, 2010 area, online servicing really wasn't that popular yet. And updates were like once every 6 months, 3 months, year, so we're stuck waiting forever and ever and ever. So you think that can be streamlined now into month updates, day one updates, weekly updates? It's like those things can happen at any point, and it takes you, what, 5 minutes to download it? And then the problems that you had were fixed, or the problems that you were encountering are fixed, things like that. So I think a lot of the time people are upset because they expect the game to be like it was. They're expecting prices of the past for technology of the future, which, in my opinion, is very much so. Like, okay, man, I understand your gripe, but if, like you guys have said before in other episodes, if you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. It's not that big a deal. And I understand that, like, oh, but I want it, then buy it. If you don't want it, don't buy it. It's always the same kind of thing that goes on and on, probably for all time. I mean, think 20 years down the line, we'll get a RE7 remake or something, and you're gonna get a whole bunch of shit over that too. So, who knows?
Cryo, you want to chime in on this or give your answer to the next question?
To be honest, a lot of the discourse I saw on the internet, I thought was pretty fucking stupid. I'm gonna be brutally blunt. It was very freaking stupid. A lot of these people were talking purely from a selfish perspective. I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this, but a lot of the shit I saw on the internet and comments were people acting entitled, like spoiled little shits. And but that's a whole different topic for another day regarding Rockstar's fan base, the toxic ones in the fan base. Let me clarify that, because the fan base as a whole isn't bad. It's just the bad actors in it. But like,
people expected there to be a remake, but if you know anything about uh the game, is it was a bitch to make. If they completely remade it, it would take almost as long as it took to make GTA 5 and GTA 6. Like separately, like those development times, it would take just as long as those two games. Because then because it would be a remake, they would make mentions about Red Dead Redemption 2. So it'll be additional lines. But like then they would charge $70. Yeah. $70 for it. And the remaster, it wasn't that easy to make the remaster to begin with because they didn't have the coding. They didn't have the coding to really work with other than the 360 version of it. Because the PS3 code was a mess. And the version that the Switch and the PS4 got, that was purely the Xbox 360's version, in which that was the superior version. And Digital Foundry did a video on it, and they said that this version was much better than the 360 version, and even with the boost that the game gets on the Series X was so much better, mainly because it had better anti-aliasing, the image quality, the shadow quality, and things like that. Sure, at one point, I think they fixed it. It had audio problems, some syncing issues, but they fixed that as far as I know. And as far as the 60 FPS thing, I don't think the game was really meant to, when they were developing it, I don't think Rockstar initially had it in mind of 60 frames. I think they meant it for 30, but that's just me. Having that 60 frames is a luxury, not gonna lie. It's a little bit of a bonus because it makes everything look even more smoother, especially the cutscenes. As far as the price tag though, it should have been at least $40. Because I think it came out for 50. It should have been 40. Not gonna lie. Because it wasn't like they did too much work on it. They did improve it so much, especially with some of the blurry aspects. But other than that, I loved it. It was really fun. I even platinumed it. It was amazing. Amazing work by the I think Double 11 worked on it. They did an amazing job. And everyone's thoughts though on like not the scrutiny, but the fear that it would turn out like the GTA trilogy, it was warranted, but people also should have done a little bit research into the devs working with them on it because they had a good record.
Yeah, they weren't a mobile. They weren't a mobile studio.
Yeah, exactly. They had a good resume compared to a Grove Street. But that's my thoughts on it.
The only thing I want to chime in on is the 60 FPS thing and the remake. I'll start with the remake thing first. So I know it would have taken them a lot more time to do one, but considering the fact that Rockstar said that's kind of on the table after GTA 6, it's gonna make people demand for it no matter what happens. That being said, if they do remake Red Dead Redemption 1 and GTA 4, I'm gonna be there day one, and I feel like if people just go on this tirade about, oh, it's gonna be $70, then it's like, all right, if they build it from the ground up, include more lore, make the gameplay even better and similar to Red Dead Redemption 2, it's like, at that point, what are you complaining about? You're getting something that's going to be probably even better than the initial product. I mean, the Capcom remakes for Resident Evil, no matter what people say about them, they are successful because most people not only are getting into them for the first time, but they enjoy the enhanced gameplay as well. So it's like if they do that, then I think it justifies itself, honestly, as a newer playing game that plays better than the past from 2 generations ago. As for everything else, I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks seeing like a last gen game kind of be like, or 2 gens ago, and they can't do like 60 or something like that. But I'm also not one of those people that will say, oh, it doesn't have 60 FPS, bad game, which I think people kind of do often. It's like, if it's stable and playable and it doesn't dip below that, then I could play whatever. I remember Evil Within 1 was like 30 FPS, and I don't remember people bringing up too much of a stink about it. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with your take on it, because a lot of people were saying that since initially it wasn't 60, it was purely 30 frames. People automatically said, "Oh, this is a shit port," and it's like, oh, okay, like, all right. You're just like, okay, thank you for your input. I'm playing this game.
That's like the worst part of gaming now. It's that people suddenly are like, it's not 60. It's like, bitch, you were playing games that are like barely 20, like maybe 10 years ago. Get over it. Like, if a game's gonna be 30, I'm still gonna play it. If I don't like how it looks with the 30, I will not play it. I will, condemn it. Like Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights looks horrible. It crashed 3 times.
Exactly.
But like a game, like in a game like whatever I played that has 30 FPS. Fucking, I played a 360 game the other day. I'm playing it just fine. It looks like shit, but I'm still playing it. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun with it. I've played fucking Redfall when it was 30 FPS. I fucking hated it. But I'm playing it now. Oh, it's a horrendous game. Anyway. But I'm playing it now at 60. It's still a bad game. So like, the frames don't do anything for the quality of a game. That's just the stupidest argument that you get nowadays, that people think they know what the fuck they're talking about. They're like, oh, the VSync of the FPS anti-aliasing. I don't know what the fuck any of that shit means. I'm just gonna play the fucking game. I really don't give a fuck. The game doesn't run at 30. Okay. Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna play the game. If it's fun, if I enjoy it, let it be however framey it is, as long as it doesn't constantly crash. I don't give a fuck.
And as long as it's smooth, if it's smooth gameplay in 30 frames, I don't give a fuck. Like, if it's like dog shit frames even at 30, and I'm losing dip, and I'm getting like a lot of dips and frames, and it's interfering with the gameplay, like I can't attack things smoothly, then I'm gonna raise the fuss about it.
Yeah, it would have.
I have a problem with Horizon Zero Dawn at 30 frames. When I was attacking, I didn't have any issues with 30.
Never.
60 just made me better with aiming and stuff.
People can play nowadays like that. It's annoying as fuck.
It will have to be completely unplayable for me to even care. Like, if it's playable and it's fine and it's stable, I'm fine with it. But if it's like, it crashes every second, bugs, that's a whole different story entirely.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk.
I mean, I never have any problems with that game when it came out.
I did at launch, but I'm also the mindset where it's like, now it's like a totally different game, so if I play that shit now, it'd be fine. Yeah.
Like, I played it in the 3 basic eras that it was relevant, basically. I played it when it first came out. I didn't really enjoy it too much because I had some glitches here and there that kind of prevented me to not play the game. Then whenever Edge Runners came out, that's when the game, kind of regained its popularity, and I played it. I loved it. Every second of it, even with its somewhat glitches. I played it again whenever the new DLC came out. I loved it. I haven't finished it because I need other games and whatnot, but it's still like a good thing. And I still have frame issues here and there. It's like every game will have the frame issues, even if it's a remastered bullshit. I didn't really give a fuck about the price for Red Dead either because I own it on the 360. I paid $5 for it. I was like, I'm not gonna fret too much about it. If you don't have backwards compatibility, I feel sorry for you at this point.
But I know. Yeah, I definitely will add something real quick because you mentioned the price. Just so no one gets confused, like the viewers. when I was talking about like I think it should have been 40, that does not mean I had a problem with the price.
Yeah.
I didn't mind paying paying $50 for it because I played the PS3 version, which is the inferior version, and I still saw like how much effort was put into it. I can't imagine how much work was put into it, like with the coding, making sure like the lighting was fixed in some areas, the shadow quality, the anti-aliasing, make sure nothing like crashed on their end. I can't imagine how long they were working on that.
I think it's all situational. Like if I didn't have the game physically on PS3, then I probably wouldn't have bought it at launch. But if I didn't, then I would have bought it no problem, because it'd be one of those things where it's like, okay, it's already kind of a great game and it has a lot of content, and they sold it for, you know, $60 in the past. It's like $10 off. It's, what am I complaining about at this rate? I'm getting a full-fledged game.
Well,
That's
I
like,
actually think that there's actually a really, really important thing. And to everyone's, you know, discussion here, I totally agree with everything y'all are saying. But I think one important thing that we are missing as well is that, like, generationally, just from studies alone and everything that have been conducted, the reason that I know for sure it's important to people, and albeit I think it's a stupid reason, but again, just from everything that's kind of gone on, from like, okay, why do people care about the, you know, FPS rate of all these things? Like, what's the big deal? You know, like the frame rate shouldn't matter. It's about the game, right? And it's like the same thing that people go on and on and on about, even with like fucking Fortnite and shit. You know, like it's a good, well made looking game. Do I like it? Not really. You know, very many different games kind of play on that factor, but it's the idea is that there's a shift, a generational shift that's been happening for the past 5 to 10 years, give or take, since about, I think it was 2016, 2015. That generational shift that we have is that people of our newer generation that are getting into video games, they're growing up with higher tier, more frame rate, more visually pleasing aspect of video games. And that is driving the biggest thing home for them, which is their own version of immersion, where we kind of grew up on those things. Well, I can't speak for everyone else, but myself, I grew up in the era where games were stories, and these stories were what really told what happened. So even if I look over and I see a tree that looks like a blocky mess, like Legend of Zelda, like hell, like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, like those are all very popular games that are considered nostalgic games today. And some of them have been remastered, and the newer generation now plays them because they've been remastered. Their immersion is based on their visual cues, not as much as through the story cues, which many studies have been kind of like telling on and on and on about how it's mostly just the viewership itself is more so tied to the visual representations of things. So like take Last of Us, very, very, very good game. Very, very good, both story and visually. The remake or the remaster did incredibly well just because it took that story and it matched the story up to its visual elements. So it looked even better. It played even better. People are like going crazy over how good it was, you know, and I was there day one release. So when I played it for the story, to me it was no problem that the game kind of had some frame rate issues, had some, you know, whatever. It's not running at 60, it was like 30 max at the time, which again, like we're saying, is fine. But I think it's just the generational shift mainly that's kind of taking over. That's more like, you know, me and you could say, I'm going to play a Halo remake because, one, the game was fantastic. Like, I'm a big fan of Halo Reach. If that came out on a remaster on a PC port, you know, or whatever, like, it comes out, I'm getting it, right? Like, same thing with, like, any time that a remake for RE comes out, of course I'm going to get it. It's fantastic. It's the stories I love. It's the things that I enjoy, but at a higher visual quality. So even though I think that we can say like that's fucking stupid to say like frame rate or the 60 frames is like, you know, not really relevant. I think it all comes down to, again, just like selling point to people that aren't in the franchise, that you're trying to get into the franchise, or, you know, because you get these people that will sit and preach about how if a game doesn't look good, because inevitably, unfortunately, we all do judge a book by its cover before buying it. So if you see a game that looks like absolute dog shit, and you're like, okay, well, it's $60 and it looks like crap, the new generation is like, okay, here's God of War. Yeah, this is the same price. Why would I pay this much for a game that looks semi-realistic and runs at 60, you know? 60.
Yeah, but here's my argument. Don't you think that complaints like that are kind of, well, you know, vapid in a sense, because it's kind of like, okay, they're judging the game based on frame rate, and I get it, like sometimes you like performance and whatnot, but it's not actually judging the contents of the game itself, nor is it judging the stability of the game, because again, you can play like a 30 FPS game, then they went back and then they retooled and they made it 60. So eventually what happens is people make all these criticisms, and then when the dev actually listens to feedback, I've seen people do this as well. I don't know why. Now this is really stupid. When they say something exists in the game else the same as broken and it's fixed already, and they still complain about it. I find that to be weird, especially when a lot of like just PC elitists tend to do that. It's like if they hot fix it, or if it's just like not broken after a certain amount of time and they get right on it, it's weird to constantly say that there is an issue when it's kind of already evaporated. So that's one thing I really do not like when people do that, and I don't know if it's just a generational thing or a lack of paying attention, but when that situation happens, it's really, really bad, in my opinion. Because it's kind of like slandering the game at that rate.
And like I said, I totally agree with like 100% of the statements being made. I'm just saying, you know, just from research alone, there's a lot of times that like it matters because people associate it with mattering. You know, because it's no longer I'm playing this game because, you know, if I recommend you a game, like let's just say I'm like, hey, Red, you know, you should play The Last of Us. I think that game is fantastic. It's phenomenal story. The gameplay aspect is awesome. I love every piece of the game, you know. I think it's really, really fun. Where comparatively to, like, again, next generationals that are playing the game are going to be like, dude, you need to play God of War. This thing looks badass. I mean, like, the frame rate's already at 60. I mean, the visuals are fantastic. The world looks so immersive, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, and the story's good, too. Gameplay's pretty fun. You know, it's like, it's going to be visually first for next generational versus where we're thinking more like story and operations versus visuality.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I was about to say, when did this turn into sociology here? Because it sounds an awful lot like sociology. I mean, here's the thing: every generation, the norms of society changes. You know, like what's normal in society, and when people don't keep up with what is referred to as like the norms, current society, people get, you know, chastised for it. So now the norm is, you know, 4K 120 frames, like that kind of thing. I think that's what Joey was referring to, like how now people expect that, and that's why people like automatically demanded 60 frames for that game.
That's
At least that's what I got out of it.
No, that's exactly the point there. And like I said, I think the social economics and the actual ergonomics of everything is very important in gaming, especially when you're talking about certain things that involve like social topics. Like, oh, well, there's a lot of people that are angry about this. why are they angry about it? There's a good point to be made for both sides. Now, I'm not gonna say, I side with, the whole, okay, it needs to be 4K compatible. It needs to be this, needs ray tracing added. It needs all this other, it's like, you can have it. It's nice. I'll be honest, it's nice. I don't think anybody here in this panel is gonna be like, oh, it's definitely not necessary. Like it's stupid to add that. It's like, no, if you add it, it's a nice bonus.
It's nice. It's nice, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not a deal breaker for everyone. I think I think the worst deal breaker is if the game is just inoperable and it doesn't work out too well. Yeah, that's one thing that it doesn't matter the side, anyone can agree on with that. But we got to move on to the other questions because we got like half a doc to go. So number 7 is, have you played Red Dead Revolver before? And if so, what do you think on it? Joey, I'll let you go first.
Actually, don't have much to go on. Never played it.
Okay, so we can move on to Cryo. Cryo, what do you think about this question?
I actually loved it. I haven't beat it just yet because when I was playing it, I was emulating it on my computer for the PS2 version, and it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a lot of fun when I was playing through it before. My recording messed up, and because games back then didn't have a chapter select, I gave up on the series, like recording it. But from when I played of it, it was a lot of fun. Like you could tell the people behind that, they who was Angel Studios before they got bought by Red Dead Revolver, you could tell a lot of passion went into it. They tried their damnedest to work with it. When they were with Capcom, it was a passion project, plain and simple. It's a shame that there was a lot of crunch time for it, but I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. But I'm glad the game got pushed through. I like the gameplay of it because at the time, there was not a lot of old Western games in the West. So I definitely like the work and thought process that was put into it. Though the development, though, I'm not thankful of the development, though. A lot of shit behind that, unfortunately. But I know the person behind it, he kicks himself for not letting Capcom go through with it.
I have played this game. I played it for a couple hours, and you can find a bit of my playthrough. It is interesting. It's sort of like a arcade style old west shooter. It's a lot more arcadey than Red Dead Redemption. Redemption had like a more open-ended structure with its missions and open world. Revolver doesn't have that. It's like you're mostly put into arenas where you're fighting people, and it sort of goes like that. You fight a boss. You might fight this guy named Pig Josh who has like explosives all over him. You blow him up. There's cannons everywhere as well, so you can sort of get on like a gun turret at some stages and fight people. You can also play with like different characters, because I remember there was an Indian, a Native American character, and there was also like this other gunslinger who had like 2 guns, and you could play as him, and he had like a crazy Deadeye. For the most part, it is a fun arcadey game, but if you're looking for something with a little bit more depth, you're probably not going to get it in this game. Again, the story is kind of paper thin. I think Red's father, the main character, dies, and you're going on another revenge quest. And it's not a lot of cutscenes in between outside of just setting up other characters. Therefore, it feels like the story is a little bit disjointed, and that's probably due to the development of the game being kind of hectic. And at first they wanted to do like a cowboy game with like mythological elements at first, and then they decided to take that out and make it more grounded. So it was kind of strange, but for some weird reason, it's again super fun to play. But you have to treat it like one of those. How can I put this? It's one of those nostalgia 2000s PS2 games. It's like you're gonna get exactly what you got on the 10 when playing them, and it's just like some course fun at best, but I don't see myself like replaying the game constantly. It is cool what they added though. There is also like a multiplayer mode as well. You can play with friends on there, so we might try that for like the parsec stuff, but other than that, it was just an okay experience. If you ask me any day of the week, do I prefer this or Redemption? I would probably say Redemption. And there's another cool thing too. They did add the characters from Revolver into the Red Dead Online for Redemption 1. I remember they had a pack for that. So if you had like nostalgia, you could play as them online. And that was definitely cool. Other than that, that's it. I don't really have too much to say other than it's a cool experiment that ultimately led to a better game in the long run with Red Dead Redemption.
And if I may also interject, the reason why it felt like arcadey, because not a lot of people know this, is it's a really interesting tidbit. Originally, in my eyes and the original designer's eyes, Red Dead Revolver is a spiritual successor to an arcade game that was later ported to a whole plethora of platforms, such as the NES, later on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. And it was, like I said, it was called Gunsmoke. And in it, it was just like how Red Dead Revolver is. It was very arcadey, didn't have too much story. You kind of just got the gist of it, like the beginning part, and then you just played through it. And the reason why is because the original person attached to it from Capcom, who worked on Gunsmoke, he wanted it to be an Old West game. And he was like, okay, let's do Red Dead Revolver, because I worked on Gunsmoke. And I believe the guy's name was Yoshiki Okamoto. Back then, he was Capcom's chief operating officer, who came to Angel Studios about it. And as a result, since he helped them along the process before Capcom canceled the project and let Rockstar take over in the background, that's why it felt arcadey. It was very small.
Yeah,
that's why.
It's not a bad game. It's just a game that
by no means. Yeah.
It's a game that you would do a playthrough of maybe once or twice, and that's it. It's not bad. It's just okay.
That's why the CEO at the CEO of Angel Studios, he's come out later and he's like, he had people at the time saying like, oh, why wasn't this open world? And people got on Rockstar's case about that. And he's like, at the time, like this was the best we could do with like what we had, especially with Capcom had in mind, what we had in mind for the game, and then also the engine, because that's why Rockstar acquired them to begin with. It was because they wanted a new engine, and they really loved what Angel Studios did with their engine, because they worked with Nintendo on their 64 project and some of their games. That's how they got in cahoots with Capcom, because Capcom saw their work. And Angel Studios was the first, or one of the first, Western studios to actually work with a Japanese gaming company. So that was like huge at the time. So this was really important for Angel Studios to work with a company like Capcom.
Also, Cryo, are you done?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in that quick tidbit.
I'm gonna assume / you haven't played Revolver, right?
No, but I do think I did get skipped on the last question.
Oh yeah, the reason for that is because we went a little too long, so we kind of had to move on. But
that's fine.
If you want to answer it real quick, you're more than welcome.
I was gonna put in that I was one of the few who disagreed with the $50 price tag. I felt like it was a bit too much for essentially a port. But it was just a. I've seen worse ports like for more money, you know. So it's like it was nothing. But Revolver is like a game that I plan on getting to, but like I'm just stuck with so much backlog on my games already that it's far in the future. So that's all I really got to say on it.
All right, and as Shook said, he's like, I haven't played this, so I'm out of that one, which makes sense. But we're moving on to Undead Nightmare. Undead Nightmare is the DLC, the zombie DLC that they had for the first Red Dead. So the opinions on this, give your thoughts. Joey, go first.
As it was my first Red Dead game, because I played it first before I played the actual original content. I found it fantastic. I mean, it's a good story. I like how they implemented the same story elements, but just used zombies instead. I mean, it's a wonderful game, and like I loved gathering up all the horses of the apocalypse. That was probably my favorite part of that game. So I mean, honestly, it was a cool world. Of course, I'm a huge zombie fan, RE fan, all that stuff, and it was probably, in my opinion, I wish they would bring it to our, Red Dead 2 and just bring another game again with the in-universe zombie stuff, or perhaps they have, and I just haven't looked at it. But again, that'd be something I would love to see.
Honestly, I've only played a little bit of this, and I guess I'll say for the record, the horde mode, the little horde mode where they can sort of come from the grave and chase you, and you had rounds. I think we need to see that in another Red Dead game, or we need to see Undead Nightmare 2 do that, because the horde situation was so damn fun. I loved every bit of that, honestly. As for everything else in general, I like that they took the time to make this crazy what if story that, you know, John's family was getting bitten by zombies and now he had to sort of take them out, which is interesting because I don't have any other recollection of like Rockstar doing this with another franchise. It's just basically this one, which is why people wanted Undead Nightmare 2 to death, and I don't blame them, honestly. It was cool, and the fact that you could be Zombie John at the end and you have your horses, you know, pestilence and everything running around, and you could you know, mow people over with their powers was awesome. I really wish they would do another DLC like this, but unfortunately they haven't, and we have to just play what we have, and it was a very cool experience. Also, shooting people's heads off with a shotgun as well was also super dope, because they added, like, of course it's a zombie like DLC, they had to add gore in the game. Did my audio bug? I hope not. Anyway, I'm just glazing Undead Nightmare, saying the horde mode is cool, that is awesome. They had gore, which was also really great. The horses with the supernatural powers was cool, and the missions were also cool in the graveyard as well, where you fight everyone to the death. It was super awesome. Well, it fixed itself, so that's great. So I'm gonna move on to the next person. Slash, have you played Undead Nightmare?
I actually have. My first exposure to Undead Nightmare was actually on the port, the new port of Red Dead Redemption 1. And I'd heard so much about Undead Nightmare from when I was young. Keep in mind, I was very afraid of zombies when I was, yes, even COD zombies, call me a pussy if you want. But, so I never really got around to Undead Nightmare when I was younger. But now, playing it, I have loved the B-movie charm that it had. It felt so much like some of those awful like 90s zombies movies you would see that were trying to capitalize off the genre. And it was so refreshing just seeing a game be so tongue-in-cheek about it, about what it was based on. And I felt like not having a set story to it as well, kind of having it be kind of more of a free roam with, hey, here's an activity out here, and if you want to do them, we'll give you a nice reward. You know, it's like there wasn't like story incentive, like forcing you to go to the story. It was kind of like a, do what you want, which I thought was very fun. I thought it was very fun for Undead Nightmare to do. Now, it all starts like the whole intro itself was just so much fun too, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall for the pitch for Undead Nightmare, because I cannot imagine some of the ideas that they might have cooked up that they just did not put into it. Because there was a lot more potential than they were letting on with that as well. And like you said, there's a reason why people are demanding an Undead Nightmare 2, because there is a lot more you can do with something like that, especially for a franchise known for killing its main characters. Like, it's just something that naturally can occur with every Red Dead. It would be like including a zombies mode in every Call of Duty. It can become a part of its identity as a fun little side mode. Whether or not they'll do that is still up in the air, but I mean, judging by the fact we haven't gotten any news about it other than clickbait YouTubers about Undead Nightmare 2, I don't think it's happening anytime soon, if at all. But to be honest, I'm not too sad about it, because I feel like Red Dead has enough content on its own to warrant not having an Undead Nightmare 2. It's a very content-fueled game, like, plus Rockstar would charge hella fucking money for an Undead Nightmare 2 nowadays.
That's $70 immediately. I already know what's coming, but you know what? I will play it. I will probably play it.
They will gouge you for as much money as they possibly can for that Undead Nightmare 2, because it's profitable. They know how much it is, how much it means to the player base, and they'll gouge the fuck out of the fan base for their money for it. And I mean, props to them for doing that. I mean, it's business after all. But I'm Jesus Christ. I'm just hell bent on not getting my hopes up about an Undead Nightmare ever again. So, and looking back on it, it's like, you know, it's not the greatest thing ever. People have praised it as like, oh, it's the greatest thing Rockstar's ever done. Not really. I don't think so.
It was just a nice little touch, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's like everybody hypes it up as like, it's like the whole idea of, oh, let's make Call of Duty Zombies an entire game. That would not sell. Undead Nightmare by itself would not sell. It purely has to exist. It's like Rainbow Six Extraction. They were trying to sell a whole fucking game mode to you because the player base liked it one time, and it fucking failed. And that would be the same for Undead Nightmare, I feel. Because it's such a niche game mode. So, yeah. That's all I guess.
Just keep it a standalone DLC. I think that's it. But we're moving on to Red Dead Online. Do you have any experience with Red Dead Online for either Redemption 1 or 2? And we will start with Cryo.
First, briefly, because I didn't say my piece briefly on Undead Nightmare. I liked it. I like the fact that it was like Resident Evil with the inventory in terms of like having to keep an eye on how much ammo you had, because it was scarce as hell to get ammo in that game mode, which I really loved because it made me go, okay, don't go for body shots, try to get headshots. And I always try to make sure my aim was accurate and everything like that. That's why I personally loved Undead Nightmare.
and that's also why I got 100% in it too. If I didn't, I would have took the time and effort to 100% it.
Are the platinums separate?
No, that's why I made sure to specifically say 100% complete. I was gonna say platinum it, but then I'm like, it's not like PS3, for example, where it was like a separate list.
Yeah, that's what I
Red Dead
figured.
Redemption.
Yeah, because
it's all the same. It's in the same like list.
I remember that for PS3, I think they had a completely different trophy list.
Yeah, thankfully it was like all the same, like right there.
Well, what do you think on not only that, but the next question, which is Red Dead Online?
Honestly, I didn't play too much of Red Dead Redemption Online. It was more so of from what I played of it, it was pretty fun. But I put more time in Red Dead Online, and it was a lot of fun. Not gonna lie. It thankfully I was one of the lucky few that didn't have people that were ruining the experience by like killing me over and over again. So I had a more positive experience with that compared to a lot of people and everything.
I'll go really quick since I only played the first one for Red Dead Online. It was fun. It was, I think the main thing I like doing is getting the highest bounty and trying to get people to kill you, because if you get the highest bounty, people can see you on the map and they'll try to take you out. I thought that was cool, holding up in a church and just blasting away at everyone who entered it. I thought that was kind of awesome with the open world element to it, as well as just being an outlaw and then having fun with your friends. But I mostly loved the deathmatch because that's where the fun was, like seeing how broken shooting someone in the head was with the I think it was a little controller situation that people had there where you like point up real quick and you get a headshot. That was fun, just having the robber modes as well, and you're just playing those and you're like, who's gonna win, who's gonna do the quick draw thing and take each other out. You sit in a circle and it's like whoever shoots whoever in the head at the start of the round, it's like you get a free kill. That was pretty cool. It just felt it felt like a situation where I played this with GTA 4, where GTA 4 was amazing and I didn't like touch the free roam that much, but when I did, it was so awesome. I have not played Red Dead Redemption 2 online, but I've heard the circles and people saying, oh, well, Rockstar was supporting GTA Online a little bit more, so they were like, we'll just fuck this, we're just gonna give this marginal updates at best and leave it at that. I remember people were holding Red Dead Online funerals, but hey, if it's still active and people still play it these days, then I guess they still accomplished some form of player base there. So
definitely. The thing that I liked about Red Dead Online is they really tried to make it like play with your friends, like a little bit more than they tried to convey with GTA Online, and in my honest opinion, because a lot of the times you kept saying like, I don't know, like subliminal messaging, like play this with like your friends or random people, things like that. And unfortunately, they wanted to support more of GTA Online because that one was the
public
money
thing.
maker.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate because Red Dead Online had a lot of potential, which really sucked.
I think what would have made it different if they brought back like the co-op missions, because that's one thing I wanted to mention real quick, is that there was co-op missions and they were pretty damn fun, and you got some for free if you pre-ordered Red Dead Redemption 1. So it's like, yeah, they should have just included more of those. It would have made it a lot more different, because with GTA and the heist you had to like kind of wait a long ass time to get them. So if they included that like in a box, that would have probably gravitated some people more towards it. But we're gonna move on to Slash. Did you play GTA Online or no?
You mean Red Dead Online?
Oh yeah, Red Dead Online. My bad. I was still in my GTA mode.
But yeah, I did play Red Dead Online around launch, and I was kind of in and out of the online circles. I never played the original Red Dead Online as much as I would love to. I've heard so much great things about it. But Red Dead Online for Red Dead 2, I felt like was a lot of missed potential that they had with it if they just did not focus on GTA Online. But like the last whoever was speaking last said, it's like it was the cash cow. There was no way they were ever going to prioritize Red Dead Online over GTA Online.
Yeah,
especially not.
That's a shame. GTA just kind of killed it.
Yeah, GTA. Everybody talks about a GTA killer and a Red Dead killer, but it's like GTA was already the Red Dead killer. And that's a plague that we see with a lot of gaming franchises. They're competing franchises within the same companies. Usually are the ones to harm those franchises.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at RE and Dino Crisis.
Dino Crisis was essentially murdered by Resident Evil.
That is an interesting thing. It's like what happens when you cannibalize yourself, and people think this is not real. This is a real thing that can happen. Like you can have a franchise that's like similar in nature at points, but the other one just completely like bulldozes it. So it is an unfortunate casualty of circumstance.
Yeah, and I feel like Red Dead Online, a lot of its elements were also half-baked on launch. I mean, the beta was just pathetic in certain places. Just kidding. It was really half-baked in a lot of places, and it sucks because, I mean, I don't want to put any blame on the devs making these games, poor devs at Rockstar, who have admittedly been self-admitted too so proudly that they crunched their devs for Red Dead 2. I feel like it was natural that the online was going to be half-baked in certain areas because, I mean, Jesus Christ.
I'm not really surprised by that, or them crunching the GTA 6 people as well. I just said Rockstar synonymous with crunch at this rate. Good.
I know that the head lead of Red Dead 2, whoever was the head creative director, I think Hauser was still creative director at that time. They prided themselves on the fact that they crunched their employees 100 hours a week. And it's just like, do you not see the issue with this? And keep in mind, this was still before Last of Us Part 2 was coming out with Last of Us Part 2 and Anthem. Those horrific crunches. We were still far. I'm sorry.
I just think Rockstar is just like well aware of it at this point. That's all I was gonna add.
Yeah. And I want to see them try another on mode for Red Dead if they do make another game that's not. Because there's so much potential there, it's like it's not a lost cause. The original Red Dead Online is very good, obviously, from what I've heard. So it's not like it's destined to fail. Like it's got some precedent. It's just up to Rockstar if they ever want to capitalize off of it. And if GTA Online keeps making money, they will never capitalize off of it. So yeah. That's all I really have to say on it. Because again, I didn't play it much, but it is what it is.
Shug, do you have any opinions on Red Dead Online?
I feel that I got cucked by GTA Online 100%. Because I kind of enjoy more Red Dead Online than I do GTA, mainly because I don't have random assholes coming to me and shooting me because I existed. So the fact that Red Dead Online kind of launched at first before they did the separate standalone thing. It launched basically with nothing. It had a story mode, but it got like maybe halfway through it, or not even halfway. But it was like you get like 3 or 4 missions, and then you're like, "Hey, I just gotta wait for an update." And so it was kind of just a bit underwhelming with what you kind of expected it to be for them to release something of an online mode, even after what they'd done with GTA at the time. You would think they would, have pretty much the same kind of activities for it. You could still do heists and stuff. You could do races with the horses. Like it's something that they could have still used some elements from the GTA Online format and kind of bring into Red Dead, but they kind of just didn't do it. I think they kind of just threw that out there just for them to have an online mode because they had no hope for it at this point. And it wasn't until a couple years ago when they're like, yeah, we're done, we're done supporting it. GTA 5 online brings us more money. So we're just going to ignore the fact that this one exists. And I was very disappointed in it because, again, I kind of enjoy the Red Dead Online more because I get to play basically the same map and just fuck around with my friends in terms of like, going hunting for hours in the mountain and then coming back with a horse just full of pelts. We would do that a lot. And those were like the fun times of the game. But then they added the moonshining stuff. We did that. We did the other activities that they added. But I still felt like they needed more. And they kind of like just abandoned it in the end. And I felt like they could have, they could have at least tried to put heist. It's a Wild West game. You could have put heist on the game 100%. But they missed out on that. So I feel like that if they do another Red Dead and they do another Red Dead Online, maybe they could try this time and actually make it to where they have two online modes that could profit off it for them, instead of just the one, and they constantly keep updating it. Because I stopped playing GTA Online way before it even got quote unquote next gen, last gen, basically. So I just feel like if it wasn't for GTA's online mode, I think Red Dead would have not been cut like it did and killed off because it's just fun. It's a good game to just mess around in, and I think it's a less annoying to deal with people because sometimes people just walk past you, or all they really do is just hogtie you and then leave you there on the side of the road. So it's like it was a bit more simpler. And not how chaotic GTA Online is, where, again, random dude will see you spawning in and then randomly pull up with his car and shoot you in the face for no reason. Yeah. So, I feel like the GTA Online kind of always makes me want to just uninstall the game as soon as I jump in online, mainly because of all that shit that happens. And I'm like, I just spawned in, dude. I can't even play the game because you just want to shoot me for no fucking reason.
Yeah,
and like...
that's why I'll do private or I'll turn on passive mode.
Yeah, and then with how they did Red Dead, it's like, hey, you have a posse, you can have your own little group of people, have, turn friendly fire off and whatnot, and all that stuff. But you can also run around, do missions. You could hunt, something that they didn't like they originally said you could do in GTA 5 back then when it came out, and never happened. So it's one of those things that I think, again, I still kind of enjoy the more grounded of Red Dead over GTA Online, for sure. I just think that they should have added more stuff to it, not abandon it halfway through.
Yeah, it would seem like the opening mission where you rob that stagecoach. It seems like that's right for like a posse to come in there and just completely like get that shit out of there, take all the gold, shoot everybody on the train. I wish it was way more of that. I think those big time robberies would have benefited those co-op missions being added in hard with like Red Dead Redemption 2. Because that's the coolest thing. Like when you play that in the campaign, that's like the coolest thing you could do. Going in that mansion as well, and like going in there shooting everybody up. That needs to be a thing in the future going forward. But we're gonna talk about the Deadeye mechanic and people's thoughts on it or whatever. So, Joey, I'll let you go first.
First off, love Deadeye in every game. It works out in every single situation, honestly. Loved it especially in Undead Nightmare. It was probably, if not the best zombie experience I've ever had when playing with the Deadeye. I mean, just the idea that like you're surrounded by 12, 15, 20 zombies, you activate it and you can just go ham, fan that hammer boy. I mean, that was fantastic, and I think it works out really well in all the game franchise, in the entire franchise.
Cryo, it's your turn. What do you think about Deadeye?
I mean, ever since its introduction in Revolver, it's improved drastically. Like for the better. Though I wish for, I know it depends on what weapon you have, but in Revolver it didn't matter what gun you had, but your rate of fire was much faster once you finished Deadeye. So like once you activate it, chose your target, and you let loose, it was really fast rate of fire. But I honestly I really loved how it operated in Revolver. Then Redemption really blew it out of the water, especially with the dueling, like being able to disarm people and uh, the duel sections, the shooting people's hats off, because that's a little thing that you can do. Uh, just seeing that play out, it was just really great to see. Like they obviously it's one of the key features in these games. So seeing it progress to where it first initially started out with, or started out from, it's truly amazing. And then Red Dead Redemption 2, they really changed the dueling, and Red, I guess it could be also considering Arthur is very experienced with the gun, more so than John was with his. Um, it seems like the Deadeye mechanic was catered to the kind of character that Arthur is, and the kind of gunslinger he is, since he knows how to handle his weapons. But yeah, I just like the improvement on it. It just got better and better over time.
All right, we have a guest that has to go, so Joey, give your outro and where can we find you on social media, buddy?
Yeah, it was fun talking to y'all. Had an enjoyable time. So you guys, anybody out there, can find me on my other podcast, Dastardly Easy DMing, which is my podcast for my TTRPG horror stories, and they're pretty fun to tell. But you guys can find me on my socials over at Patchwork Games, which is an E instead of an O in work. I'm on Instagram as well as on YouTube now as well. So I look forward to interacting with everything and being here again. And I appreciate it, man.
No problem, man. Take care of yourself, and as always, have a wonderful night.
Yeah, had fun. Later, guys.
Later. Alright, I guess I'll give my opinion on Deadeye. I'm gonna keep it short, but it's one of those, okay, the first thing I was thinking of when I did this was, oh fuck, Max Payne is bullet time. It's essentially bullet time, but in a way, it is, and it's different, because you can mark targets while you do it, which you couldn't do at Max Payne. So you can aim at the leg, the head, torso, and then he'll hold the gun until you let go, and when the markers go flying, the guy just gets hit in like every part of his body. It's one of those mechanics that is very, very simple, but very, very effective in what it does. And I just can't see any sort of Red Dead game without it at this point. Now, granted, there are some better than others. I believe it wasn't really all that great with the auto targeting in Red Dead Revolver, but it got better over time, especially that and the dueling, which you're mostly mashing like R2 in some of them. But it definitely did get better. I loved it personally, and the best thing is, like, with Redemption 2, you can do it with like different weapons. So if you have a knife, you can go Deadeye with that, stab someone, poison knife, stab someone with that, incendiary rounds where you can like just sort of blast people and set them on fire. That was also pretty awesome. So it has a variety of uses as well in the combat. You just have to always be careful because, again, it has a meter, and you know that's not given all the time for free. You have to definitely micromanage that in order to have your cores maintained and everything as far as the second game goes. I did love it, and I think it's just a great addition, a great mechanic, and I just don't see Red Dead without it. Even Revolver, I don't think that game would have worked if it didn't have some perk of like slow-mo shooting. Next, we're gonna move on to Slash. What do you think of Deadeye?
Deadeye's an interesting mechanic for me. I mean, obviously it's iconic at this point, but for me personally, I feel like as a main console player, well, then again, Red Dead is only available on console, so I just. But a lot of the time, I feel like Deadeye is made redundant when they essentially allow you to auto aim, and I feel like the entire auto aim mechanic being in the game kind of makes Deadeye a bit redundant because already you can just like you can already aim at like people's heads and get good kill shots, and it just seems like Deadeye is there as a gimmick. So it's one of the flaws of Red Dead that I've always been very critical of personally. And I wish if they do make a future game, they would fix that. Just take the auto aim out, personally. But it's very stylistic, and it matches the entire era that the game is taking place in. I mean, for fuck's sake, it's so iconic they essentially just made another version of it in GTA 5. With Michael's shooting ability, you know, and it's just like, what? It's like, so obviously it's going to remain, and plus it's completely fucking useless in Red Dead Online as well. So I don't get why it's even there. To be honest, it would be like putting. Because Deadeye works in real time instead of slowing everything down. So I'm just thinking like, well, what's the point? You know, and a part of me is just, I don't know.
They did that, that same criticism can apply to Max Payne 3, just as a fun fact, trivia, because they tried to do that as well at Max Payne 3, where it's like, it's bullet time in real time, and the only people affected are the folks in your cone of vision, so the people in front of you, but it doesn't affect everyone else. So if you're doing bullet time and someone in front of you and you stop them, you're still getting shot in the back of the head by someone else on the side. And I never got that mechanic or why they decided to try to make that work. I think maybe it just should have been like a power-up where it affects people for like a couple of seconds, then it goes away. I think that would have been a lot more better. And like arena deathmatch shooters, they did that better all the time. You pick up something real quick, you might be overpowered for like maybe 15-20 seconds, and then it goes away and you have to wait until it respawns.
Yeah, and just I guess that applies to the half-baked criticism I have of Red Dead Online anyways, so it kind of fits. Kind of harkens back.
Shug, do you have any opinions on Deadeye?
It's cool. It's fun. Again, yeah, like the first game, Red Dead 1 at least. I don't never played Revolver again, but I felt like it was pretty cool. It was fun, and I think whenever they did Max Payne 3, I feel like they kind of basically, establish a bit more into that. Even though I think they're probably not the actual originators of it for Max Payne, but I think that bullet time stuff is pretty cool. I love it. It's always very fun to use. I feel it makes you look like a total badass in stories. At least, whenever you use Michael and 5 and he does his thing with the guns, it's pretty cool. And whenever Deadeye is done, I feel is a lot cooler, I would say, because of all the stuff going on in the background when you're activated, the music, the intensity of the pulsing whenever you're targeting and the meter's running out. I feel like it's a lot cooler when you do it in a game like that, at least in a Western game, because I don't know, it just feels it belongs there, and just the way that it is done, and get rid of enemies very quick with one or two clips of ammo, makes it just very fun. I feel like it's a mechanic that they have improved a lot, and they will keep improving the more they, to fuck around with Red Dead, or even if they put it on GTA 6 just for the hell of it.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do agree with that. I mean, it's such a good way, like you said, to clear multiple enemies. Then, because I play Red Dead Redemption without aim assist. I know I'm a madman. Um, the only time I don't, I turn it off on when I'm on foot. On horseback, I have that shit on because of how hectic it can be because of all like the action. But for the most part, I have aim assist on. But then I quickly get out of the auto lock and I aim manually for myself. Um, when I'm on horseback, but on foot, I just have that shit turned off. The the thing that I like the most, I meant to bring this up, but Shug ended up actually really brought this to my attention. In Red Dead Redemption 2, you can actually hip fire. You can actually hip fire Deadeye, which I thought was really neat. I almost forgot about that. I tried doing a Red Dead Redemption out of habit.
I also kind of like the
It's hard as
cinematic.
fun.
I like the cinematic camera angles when you shoot certain people in Red Dead 2, and it'll like freeze time, but you'll see like close-ups of their faces or the enemy getting shot at like another angle. Like some dude shot a guy like standing near glass, and the glass just like shattered while the bullet goes to his head. That shit is sick, man.
Or when the heads disappear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because Red Dead was doing all the dismemberment stuff. Like the graphics and the gunplay is absolutely crazy in that game.
Yeah.
And it complements the Deadeye well. So I think if you're one of those people who like attention to detail, then you're gonna love it there. But we're gonna move on to the final question of the night. What is your favorite mission or standout moment in the Red Dead franchise? And Cryo, I'll let you go first.
There's so many good moments. Shit. Oof. Now, at least for Red Dead Redemption, I would have to say it's a toss up between the assault on Fort Mercer, because I it's it pays an homage to a Clint Eastwood movie called The Outlaw, Josie Wales. There's a scene towards the beginning where Clint Eastwood's character infiltrates the Union's camp in a wagon, and covering the cloth covering up the wagon is actually a minigun in it, and he's on it. And as they are doing the speech and everything, he starts mowing them down. and that will always remind me of that movie. I really love that. But then also the final mission for Red Dead Redemption, where he stops running. All his life, all he's done is run. We knew this before Red Dead Redemption 2. The fact that he stopped running, he told his family, get the hell out of here. And he just stayed, really goes to show his character development in just one game. And if you play the second game, it hits even more emotionally, considering, like I said, all he's known all his life, even when he was a kid, was running. He always ran. He never stayed. So the fact that he actually stayed and faced, Edgar Ross and stared into his eyes before he, died, it was one of his ways of saying, fuck you kind of moments. Because he's like, you thought I was going to run? No, I'm going to take it. Because I'm going to win in the end anyways. I've redeemed myself. I have nothing left to lose. That's one of the moments that stood out to me the most in the first game. And for the second game, this one's brief. When the group started falling apart and everyone started to dip one by one, and Dutch started going more and more like insane.
I think for my favorite moments, I definitely have to agree with the ending of Red Dead 1, where John is like, all right, enough's enough. I'm going to face all these people. I'm going to save my family. And then you have every singular armed police outside. That part was ridiculous. It was like 30 dudes, and you're John Marston, and then all of a sudden it goes into Deadeye, and then you pick off the cops, and you get like maybe 2 or 3 shots off. A couple of guys go down, they start like blasting. It is insane. Experiencing that for the first time, and I was spoiled to that, by the way, but experiencing it in gameplay was a whole different experience. So I gotta commend. Yeah, I gotta commend them there for doing a scene like that. It's pretty cool. For the second one, I have 2 favorite moments. I would say it's probably the ending where you're, trying to fight Micah and everything, and it's one of, I forget which honor rank you have to be in order to do it, but you could take out one of his eyes, and I just thought that was, again, I hate this character, so doing him grievous harm definitely made me happy. And another scene I liked was just honestly when they decided to introduce you to the Bayou section, and you take one of, I think it's Bronte, you take him on a boat, and this is when like Dutch kills him. And when that happens, it's insane because there's these big ass crocodiles and gators in the ocean. You have to like keep shooting them to keep you off, and if not, they'll grab someone out of the boat, or they'll grab you and kill you. And I thought that was a really interesting gameplay premise, where it's like you don't know where they are, it's kind of dark, and you have to swim in this water, and if you don't do it, you're going to become croc food. So I thought that was cool. As well as the mansion sort of fight, where it's like it's your gang and a bunch of people in there as you go for John Marston's son, and you're just shooting the place up. The music, I think it's just the music and the presentation of them walking towards the mansion is a very iconic shot, and I think that was done really, really well. As well as the last shot where it's like you see the crazy lady just run back in there because she's like insane. Oh, her family just died, you just killed everyone, and it's that last shot of the mansion being totally on fire. Beautiful sequence in my opinion.
Yeah, same, especially given like that was the turning point for John. That's when he started becoming more of a father to Jack.
Yeah. So that was a really just great moment in a game riddled with like so many of them. But before I just gush all over them, I'm gonna let someone else go. So Slash, you go next. What was your favorite Red Dead mission and moment?
There's a tough one. It's hard to pick one because I mean they all have their like their upsides to them. I don't think there's one horrible mission in the franchise. I can't name one, at least. You know, and it's just like, Jesus. Obviously, I think American Venom. If I had to say anything, it would be American Venom, the final mission of the main story. Simply for the music choice, while you're fighting up the hill in the final leg of the mission, getting to Micah, and it's just an epic soundtrack of the same name, American Venom. Anyone listening to this podcast, I would urge you to listen to all of the gunfight music of the soundtrack, American Venom being one of them. It's a genius soundtrack. And obviously the ending to that mission being the death of Micah. It's one of those missions that just really gives you that power fantasy that you were looking for the whole game. If that's what you were looking for. It really builds off of that final shot from Red Dead Redemption 1 of John standing his ground. And it finally gives us an image of him actually standing his ground. Another one I would say would be the bank heist right before Guarma. That is one of my favorite missions from a story perspective rather than gameplay. It's where Hosea and Lenny die, and it's obviously a very sad mission. So, a lot of emotions can run through there, but then again, a lot of emotions can run through a lot of those missions. The first Red Dead, Red Dead 1's missions aren't too innovative in some ways. I mean, you literally have a mission where you're herding cows, and it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. But again, I'd have to make a top 10 list of my favorite missions from the Red Dead series on a YouTube video if I wanted to get this out, so I will leave it at that.
What about you? Any favorite moments or favorite missions?
I have nothing for Red Dead 1, to tell you that much. But for Red Dead 2, it would be that one you mentioned where we have to, as a collective group, go and just destroy this mansion and its people. That's a pretty good mission. That one actually felt like a movie. And another one that felt like a movie was one of the missions you do with Charles, where you gotta go to a train station and you gotta like save some natives that got captured. I think that one, whenever it starts you off running in a distance from a field and just running towards the train station, getting shot at and all that stuff, that was epic as hell to me. And I think those two moments for like in general were one of my favorites, because they were more movie-like than anything else. And I would say maybe the ending also. I would think it would be applied to that same kind of issue where it was you playing as Arthur, fighting your way up to the top so you can escape and whatnot, or help John escape. So there were some amazing moments, but I think those were more movie-like to me, at least. Were a lot cooler, I would say. I don't think any of the game have really any bad missions. Like I said, or like you said earlier, they're slow, but bad, not really. There's not that many bad missions in most of these games. So I would say that one for those two and maybe three for sure would be one of my favorites, I would say, because I still remember them mainly, and I don't really recall a lot of the game.
Also, if I had an honorable recommendation or honorable mention, it would probably be that Hosea shooting that happens, because not only does he get clapped, and he's like a built-up character so far, they clap Lenny like on the rooftops I just started shooting everybody.
Same.
That brought the
Yeah.
emotions out of me. I was like, holy shit, man.
Or
Lenny!
or
'Cause
what's
it
the one
wasn't-
character that gets sniped in one of the first towns? What's his name?
Sean.
Sean. That one pissed me off because I actually liked him, and I was so pissed.
Yeah.
I killed everything there. I just saw red.
Dude, I hate the O'Driscolls so much. They get on my last nerve, man. I shoot everyone I can when I see them in the game. Like, no shit.
Goddamn O'Driscolls! Why?
I shoot them all the time, and the fucking I encountered them twice. I encountered the KKK twice in the game, and I went up to them and I destroyed them.
Oh, I will say a mission other than American Venom that comes to mind definitely would have to be the oh yeah, when home when he thought his gang was going to break him out, but turns out we got rid of his people that was going to rescue him, and he realized he's actually going to die. The look of terror on his face when he sees Arthur and Dutch, he was terrified because that's when he knew he lost. I don't know if you guys remember that mission,
I do not, sadly.
Yeah, it was one of the last few missions in Saint Denis. Como Driscoll was there, and he was getting hung, and he had two of his people on foot, posing as I guess two of the guards that were going to break him out, and he also had a sniper on the roof to help with the escape. But Arthur takes care of the guy on the roof, and Sadie ends up slitting one of the person's throat and stabbing another in the back, I want to say. And Colm thinks he escaped, but then he sees Arthur on the roof. Arthur does the wave at him. Then he looks at the crowd and he sees Dutch is there. And that's when he gets hung because he realizes no one's coming to rescue him.
He genuinely does the TF2 sniper wave too.
He's just like, hi.
The last moment I think I have on my mind is the one where there's that guard that's scared shitless, and Arthur's like, this poor boy is gonna get his brain shot out, and then he's like, hurry up and open the goddamn door, come on. I just thought it was so funny. Where they were just holding him ransom, and that guy's like pissing his pants.
Oh, I do have one quick bonus question that would only take like a minute because it's something very small but crucial to the games, because we talked other things crucial like the gameplay, story. What did you guys think about the music for each of the games?
I don't want to keep it too long, so I'll give my answer real quick. I just thought it was fitting in a lot of degrees, especially when people start like just dying. I think what people will remember the most, honestly, this is kind of like, typical answer, but the theme that plays when Arthur like dies, Stand Unshaken.
Oh, I cried.
That one really hit when it hit. I think that was a great placement of music. So they definitely are their maestros. They know what they're doing when it comes to placing the music right and making the sound design right, and just everything about it is just perfect in my opinion.
Agreed, and I'll go real quick as well. I definitely agree with that. They know exactly where to put it. The same thing with Red Dead Redemption, like when John goes to Mexico for the first time, Far Away plays, and when John dies, Bury Me Not on the Lone Prairie plays. When John goes home, Dead on Arrival, or Compass is called, and then Red Dead Redemption 2, like going back to the camp. That's the way it is, and it's like Arthur. It's a symbolization of Arthur realizing like this is it. This is the last stretch for the gang. Everyone's splitting off, doing their own thing. Then Shaken. It's one of the most heartbreaking songs to hear, depending on what your honor level is. Even on both versions, it's really sad.
Anyone else have any opinions on the music?
I was about to say too. Anyone else have thoughts on like the music?
It's good.
Yeah.
How can you forget? How could you ever forget? Give me a ruler and a saw on the board, and I'll cut it.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
I'll climb up a ladder with a hammer and.
Oh, well, he's making the house. Oh my god.
That one was funny. That one's like
it
a
was
wholesome
so
moment.
hard to build a little house.
I know people love to say that John's section is very slow. I get why they did it. For me personally, it really showed like the effort that John really put into working on the ranch before the events of the first Redemption game, before he got taken from his family. So you get to see where he was coming from in terms of like the effort he put into like getting the plays, because that was like a barren wasteland that he wanted.
Okay,
but
so the first epilogue is indeed slow. I'm not gonna deny that it did feel slow to me, but I feel like I'm gonna also defend it. I feel like after so much death and misery and chaos, and after you just seen the group like break apart and one of the main characters like sort of die, I think the audience really needed that sort of break from everything involved, because I think if they just did it where you just jump in and you try to kill Micah immediately, I don't think it would have made sense to John's story. I think it would have been just, oh, we're gonna go do this now or whatever, without any planning of the story, getting his family away before this moment happened. So I think it was like slow, but it was necessary to the story.
Yeah. I mean, because people were pumped up on adrenaline. That's why a lot of people said it was slow. They were so used to like just action, gunshots. When it actually slowed down, people are like, we don't want this, we want more.
Yeah, you gotta have the slow moments in there, levity as they call it.
Yeah,
Also,
and when John gets word about Micah, and that's when the action picks up again, and it does that purposely because John had already quit being an outlaw at that point. They had already got away from that, but when Sadie came back and said, we know where Micah is, that's when the action starts picking up even more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Also, the difference between the epilogues is like, I feel like a works for Red Dead 2 the way a short epilogue works for Red Dead 1, because Red Dead 2's final Arthur mission is very long and very like heavy on emotions. Meanwhile, the final mission with John in Red Dead 1 is very action-packed, and its hard-hitting emotions are at the very end of it. It's not emotional from the get-go. So, like, you're already ready to jump in and kill the motherfucker, Edgar Ross, after John's death. But with Micah, it, like you said, it kind of needed the audience to breathe a little bit. I felt like you said, straight up jumping into killing Micah, it would throw the pace off of the whole game.
Yep.
It allowed some softer moments. It also allowed that really cool Red Dead Redemption case shot, so we can't really complain about that.
We got to make a house too.
And making a house, Truly the most southern of activities. if I do say so myself as a Southern boy. But no, it's like Red Dead 2's epilogue was perfect for its game. It's like a long epilogue couldn't work for Red Dead 1 and a short epilogue couldn't work for Red Dead 2 because their final missions were very different in tone.
So I think this is a great place to end this podcast. Really in-depth discussion here. We had a fun time. Definitely, if there's more Red Dead in the future, we will indeed be there to check it out. But we're gonna do outros. So, Cryo, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on YouTube at cryogaming.com, as well as Twitter under the same handle. Just replace the letter O with the number 0.
You can find me on social media at RenOperative_ on Twitter. You can find me on Twitch at Renegade Operative or Renegade _Operative. And you can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. I recently put a review up of Resident Evil 4 Remake, so you can check that out, as well as Mega Man X4. 2 great Capcom games, comes at 4s, so I tried to make a little play on that, and I think they got turned out pretty well, so check that out. I will be talking about Marvel vs. Capcom coming back tomorrow and working on this podcast, so I'm just going to be busy with that, but I might go back to streaming soon because I've been out of the loop. I just had to figure out, I have like 90 games on Xbox, 900 games or so. What am I going to play? I guess I'll figure it out as I go along. Slash, what about you? Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at @slashesback. Unfortunately, my previous account was suspended for no reason, so I had to create a new one. You can find me on Twitch at the Slasher of 78. I will actually be going back to streaming very soon. My first stream will be a live stream review of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I'm very excited about doing that. I don't know when I'm going to be doing it, but it will be coming soon. I'm also thinking of starting back up my YouTube channel. Just simply Slash. It's simply just a Michael Myers photo, so look out for that. I'm going to be posting reviews akin to Ren. So yeah.
That's good, man. That's good. We're inspiring the homies out here to start their channels up again. Honestly, it's really fun to do a review. Like, you just sit there and just give your thoughts and just go whole hog. Next up is Shug. Where can we find you on social media?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram, where I'm probably more active at SugarBastion_. YouTube also at SugarBastion, same name with Twitch included. I'm currently doing Redfall. If you want to see the chaos of that unfolds, it's a garbage game, but it's fun so far with people. You can see how that goes, and some other games that I'm still playing and going through right now, currently on hold, or I'm just lazy and not editing.
Playthroughs are a bitch.
They suck.
I've experienced that, especially when the game is long, dude. It's like multiple parts. It kills me.
That's horrible. I'm struggling with Final Fantasy right now.
I feel your pain because I'm barely just getting through that, and it's like I have another long game I need to play as well. Like I might go back to Red Dead. Like, oh shit. Well, I might as well just see what I can do with this or put it on the back burner. But This was fun. Also GTA 6, whenever that drops next year, we will be talking about that as well. I know it was a little bit of that mentioned, but we're definitely gonna get into that. So we will see you guys next time out there in the Old West. Take care of yourselves and don't get shot by the Cowboys later.